Meeting to order. Today is Thursday, February 15th. It is 9:01. All council members are present. Town manager, town attorney, town clerk. If you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Our first item for discussion is a presentation by Lee Cares. Good morning, Glenn.
Good morning, Mayor. Thank you, council members, staff. Appreciate the opportunity to talk to you. Is this? I'll wait.
Just pull it a little closer to you.
How's that?
There you go.
All right, I'll start over. So thank you, Mayor, council members, and staff. We appreciate the opportunity to talk to you today, primarily
Glenn,
about,
if you wouldn't mind, just state your name for the record.
Yeah, absolutely. Glenn Salyer, Assistant County Manager. And we're here to talk about the Lee Cares Individual Housing Assistance Program that's being offered as part of the CDBG-DR efforts, the Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery Funding that we received from HUD. This program is likely to be the one that you hear the most about from your constituents because it involves them most directly. So we want to make sure you're armed with the information that you need to interact with them, direct them as you might need to do. And so Jeannie Sutton will provide a presentation with some details on that program, and we'll try to answer any questions that you have. Before that, I just wanted to take a minute to address the CDBG-DR program globally. The mayor asked before the meeting where we stood in terms of the program overall. So where we stand is we have an approved action plan as of November of last year. We are in the process of launching all of the programs that we set out in the action plan. Thus far, we've put forward the planning program. We have multifamily rehabilitation funding on the street. And we are, of course, have launched the Lee Cares program that we're going to talk about. Coming up on March 5th, we will have notices of funding availability published for infrastructure. And then April 2nd will come the new housing development. So we have up to $400 million potentially available for affordable housing development. That starts coming forward in April. And I think I'll just say where we stand is although the process to get through all of the HUD requirements is pretty, I don't want to say onerous, but it's a very methodical process. We are ahead of the game in the sense that, for instance, we learned yesterday that we are the first jurisdiction in the funding cohort to be launching any programs, and no other jurisdiction has even begun solicitation for general contractors to help with these individual housing programs. And so what that means for us is, because we're first to market, we have a huge slate of general contractors from which to choose, and that will benefit our residents greatly. We had 49 submissions, probably around 15 of those will ultimately be selected and qualified to do work in the area. And so I think the residents stand to benefit well from us getting out in front of this thing, rather than sort of having whatever's left over if other jurisdiction got to it before us. So that's a real broad overview, very quick. If you want me to address anything else in that regard, I'm happy to do it. Otherwise, we'll turn it over to Jeannie.
Hey, I just had one quick question about the infrastructure part of it. You know, for us, it's pretty unique, obviously, because you have infrastructure down here as well as we do. How is that going to work through that porthole as far as applying for funding through that bucket when we have shared assets or assets that cross each other? How is that going to work?
Well, essentially, the owner of the specific asset in question would be the applicant. Okay. So, for instance, let's take the water system. That's probably the one that comes to my mind, at least. With respect to the transmission, either the production or transmission assets, that would be a Lee County application. For the distribution pieces on your side that you own here on the island, you can make application for those.
Okay.
Now, I will say on infrastructure, the key thing to remember is there has to be a tie back to Hurricane Ian. That's pretty simple for the most part, especially down here.
Mhm.
Or it has to be a pure mitigation project, one or the other. And we only have a few mitigation projects that we can do. So mostly we do need Hurricane Ian tiebacks. I think what we're going to find is most public assets that were damaged in the storm have funding available through FEMA Public Assistance, Federal Highway Administration, and other agencies. So just keep in mind that we can't provide a duplication of benefits. We do have to go through that analysis to see what other funding sources are available. HUD will only allow us to fund any shortfall in those other funding sources.
That makes sense.
Okay.
Vice Mayor?
First of all, thank you for being here, and thank you for your team for taking the time to come here and brief. This is all part of Resilient Lee, correct? This program, or is this separate from Resilient Lee?
Well, they're essentially separate in the sense that the Resilient Lee, which the county manager will talk about next, is really a sort of an overarching plan that is geared towards advocating for additional funding to get projects done. Whereas the CDBGDR program is a very specific allocation of $1.1 billion that HUD has given to Lee County to do projects. So undoubtedly, some of the projects in the plan that will be discussed will probably be funded through CDBGDR, but they are essentially different tracks.
I appreciate that. There's a lot of folks who watch this who are trying to just understand, because it gets rather complex, particularly with the various layers and all the hurdles and steps that you all have to go through. There's a perception out there, but for a variety of reasons, the value of property, the average income in Fort Myers Beach, that we're not going to be eligible for much help, even though that we were at the tip of the spear along with Sanibel for the storm. Obviously, a lot of folks have suffered. Can you comment on that? Is that is that too broad of a generalization? Do you see hope for Fort Myers Beach in a broader sense to get some help?
Yes, sir. Appreciate the question. Definitely see opportunity for the beach to get assistance. I'll try to just briefly explain how that really works for us. So HUD requires that we spend at least 70% of this allocation on projects that benefit low, moderate income households. And so that does, it does confine what we can do in areas that don't have a lot of those households. But we are doing a number of things to try to address that. So for instance, we're providing matching funds for hazard mitigation grant program projects. So the town has applications they've submitted to the state for mitigation projects to get funded through FEMA. Those require a 25% match. The CDBGDR program will be providing that match on your behalf for any projects that are eligible, and we think yours will all be eligible. What we're doing is we're asking other jurisdictions to help us in this effort by identifying projects that are in a low moderate area or have low moderate clientele. And we will ask those jurisdictions to make those completely CDBGDR projects so we can pay 100% of that cost. The state will then give HMGP credit that can be reallocated to the other municipalities. And what that does is it ups our low moderate income benefit quotient, and it frees up some additional funds that can be spent in other areas. So that's one thing we're doing. I'd say the primary thing we're doing, though, and you'll hear a little bit about it in the housing, is across all programs, we are prioritizing the low moderate income benefit projects in such a way that we can demonstrate to HUD that we have made that the priority. We've tackled those needs, and at some point we'll be able to show that we've satisfied the demand. And if there's money left over, those additional funds can and should be programmed for the benefit of the entire community. So it's a fairly systematic process we're going through so that we can ask HUD for a waiver, allowing us to spend more than 30% of the funds on non-low moderate area projects. I know that's a lot, but I hope
No, that's actually very helpful. Thank you very much.
Yep,
Yeah.
my pleasure.
Any other questions for Glenn while he's up there? No?
Well, again, thank you for the opportunity, and Jeannie Sutton will walk you through the housing program.
Thanks, Glenn. Welcome,
Thank you.
Jeannie.
Good morning.
And thank you for having us here today. So as Glenn mentioned, I'm here to talk about the individual housing programs for the benefit of individual homeowners or property owners that may need assistance with their homes as a result of Hurricane Ian. So as Glenn mentioned, the county did receive $1.1 billion from HUD. About $241 million of that is allocated for individual housing programs. $175 million is set aside for rehabilitation, reconstruction, and elevation of homes. Another $10 million is set aside for home purchase assistance, and then about $56 million for voluntary residential acquisition. So we'll talk a little bit about each of these programs. Housing rehab, reconstruction, and elevation is for property owners that need assistance repairing their home, reconstructing it, or elevating it as a result of damage from Hurricane Ian. For this program, to be eligible, the households have to be low income. We'll talk about that in a minute, but there are some program caps associated with the rehab. So in order to get just rehabilitation assistance, the maximum assistance available is $250,000 per household. If someone needs reconstruction and or elevation, the maximum assistance per household is $450,000. In addition to those programs, we also have home purchase assistance, which can provide up to $75,000 in assistance to help someone purchase a home outside of the special flood hazard area anywhere within Lee County. That $75,000 can be used for down payment, closing costs, mortgage guarantees, pretty much anything that they would need to be able to move them into a house. And then, of course, voluntary residential acquisition. So this is a program intended for repetitive loss property owners that have seen multiple flood losses in the last 10 years. In this program, we would offer assistance by purchasing the home from the homeowner and also providing them relocation assistance to move to a house that is outside of the special flood hazard area within the county. So I mentioned the low income eligibility criteria. So for a household of 4, the maximum income is about $68,100. As you can see on the screen, the income varies, income limit varies by household size. So this applies.
I just want to, I'm
Yes.
sorry to interrupt you. I just have a quick question for folks who might be watching this. As you can imagine, there are a number of folks on the island that are relatively far along. They've already raised their home. Are folks eligible retroactively for these funds?
That's
if they've
coming
done the
up.
work? Oh, is that coming up? That's coming up? All right.
Yes,
All
absolutely.
right. Sorry, I will keep going.
No, that's okay.
But why he's got you stopped there, the question I've been asked, the 80% of that number, is it 80% of the number, or is that number there the 80%?
That number there is
Okay.
the 80%. Yes. Yes. And keep in mind too, again, this is for homeowners, but also for property owners that own rental properties. So as long as they're committed to renting the property, if it's currently vacant, to a household that income qualifies, or if their current tenants income qualify, they could be applicants as well. So you did ask about reimbursement. So yes, I will cover that before I jump into duplication of benefits. So reimbursement is eligible if someone is in the process of completing the repairs on their home or have already completed them. That includes a full reconstruction or elevation. They are eligible for reimbursement. So as long as they otherwise qualify for the program, so they can they should save their receipts and submit an application requesting that assistance. We'll send an inspector out to the house to take a look at it, make sure all the repairs are complete. If they're not yet complete, I would suggest they complete all of their repairs first and then apply to the program for the assistance.
And I hate to do this to you, but again, for people who are watching, the income cap for this, is that based strictly on income? Is it also based on assets that are owned for like retired folks? You know, their income may be a little lower, but they may have significant assets. How is that all calculated? Just 10,000 foot.
Yeah, absolutely. So our income review takes a look at their last year's tax return. So whatever their adjusted gross income was on the tax return is what we use to determine their eligibility.
So if they have significant assets at the bank or 401ks or whatever, that's not part of the calculation?
That is not part if it's not included on their adjustable gross income in their taxes.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you touched on, or maybe I'm jumping ahead, but even though you may not meet that 80% AMI requirement, if you are a property owner and the tenants that you have within that house meet the 80% EMI, that makes the property owner available as long as it's 5 years, they stay there for 5 years. Is that right?
That is absolutely correct. Yes. So if their tenant income qualifies, or even if the unit is vacant and they will commit to renting the unit after the repairs are made to an income eligible household.
And that's up to 5 years.
That is 5
It has to
years.
be 5 years.
That is correct.
So how does how does that work as far as what they have to charge for rent? Is that rent free? Is that, or is it market rate rent, or is it based on the 80% AMI? How do they, I'm just trying to ask questions for property owners who are looking at
Absolutely.
this thinking this could be a way for us to get some of our people, another kind of workforce housing, if you will, initiative to get people that are working on the island that may meet this 80% AMI for those that could take advantage of this program that don't meet it, but could get people in there for at least 5 years. Their question to me is, who controls what the rent is, and how is that policed, I guess is the best way to say it.
Yeah, absolutely. So once the repairs are made on a rental unit, there'll be a mortgage placed on the property. The same is true with the owner occupied units. It's 5 years. And that mortgage is in the amount of the cost of the repairs. For rental properties, in that mortgage, we're going to specify the requirements that they have to lease to income eligible households and charge an affordable rent, which is defined as HUD's fair market rent value. So that's established annually by HUD. I don't know off the top of my head what those numbers are, but it is lower than a market rate rental.
Does the property owner who owns the rental select who rents then, or does the program select who the renter is? I know you set the criteria, but who actually selects the person that would be the renter?
Yeah, the property owner is responsible for selecting the tenants and confirming their eligibility, and they're responsible for providing their eligibility or income information to the county as part of our annual monitoring for that project.
Very good, thank you.
And I think you just said something that maybe deflated my balloon a little bit, if you will. You said it goes on as a mortgage. Then I would assume they would be required to carry flood insurance, wind insurance if they own the property outright.
Yes.
And they paid for the repairs themselves, even though they're getting, I think you said it was 250,000 up to
Yes.
for rehab. So they would then have to carry flood insurance. Okay.
Yes, carrying flood insurance and mortgage or homeowners insurance is a federal requirement, just like receiving FEMA funds or any other federal grant funds.
Okay.
All right. So I do want to go back really quickly to duplication of benefits. So with these programs, there's a little bit of confusion, I think, among some folks about if they got insurance money or they got money from FEMA, are they still eligible to submit an application? And they absolutely are. The only difference is that their award amount may be reduced to make up for the funds that they have received from insurance. So if they received, an allocation or settlement from their insurance company to fix the roof, and they either have done that or not yet done and are holding on to those funds, that roof expense will be taken out of the award allocation that they're provided through these funds. So they're absolutely still eligible to apply. Case managers will work with them to take a look at what they did get from FEMA or insurance, and then work on identifying their particular situation and determine what their award cap will be. So in order to apply for these programs, I already mentioned income documents will be needed, primarily their most recent tax return. So the 2022 tax return, if they haven't filed 23, they have filed 23, that's super great. We'll take that as well. Homeowners will also be responsible for providing a photo ID, proof that they actually own the home at the time of the disaster and still own the home. And also a third-party authorization authorizing us to have a conversation with their insurance company and FEMA to verify the benefits that they have received. So there's a couple ways to apply for the program. So online on our website at leeflcares.com, there is an online application there, a bunch of information, some helpful videos to walk people through the actual application itself. There's also a mobile application on the App Store and the Google Play Store. And then, of course, we have in-person intake centers. So the Lee Cares Outreach Center is the primary location that is open Monday through Friday from 9 to 5. That is off of Gladiolus by the Lakes Library. And then we have a spot right here on the beach where folks can come in on Fridays from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. to get assistance without having to leave the island. So in addition to this, we have been conducting outreach to make sure that people are aware of the programs. So you might have seen some news articles about folks with "How Can I Help" shirts on, blue Lee Care shirts, walking around to communities, knocking on doors. So far, they have knocked on about 17,000 front doors and left flyers or communicated with the homeowner to let them know about these programs. They are actually out here on the beach today knocking on doors. So if you see them around today, make sure to stop and say hi. We're also in the process of sending mailers out, starting with the islands and working our way towards the inland. So if we don't cover someone through door-to-door outreach, we're hoping to cover them through mail. There's also social media postings and regular news releases going out as well.
For folks who are listening who may not be able to see this slide, you're going to have a representative at the town of Fort Myers Beach. Assume it's at our trailers, right? Right. And which trailer would that be in? Do we know?
The main admin trailer.
The main admin trailer. And so you'll have, if I can read this correctly, you're going to have a representative on Fridays on the 9th of March.
That is
February.
February.
February
Yes.
9th, 16th, and 23rd. So 9th is gone. So tomorrow and next Friday, and they can answer any questions that the public may have.
Yes, absolutely. And so there'll be case managers there that can actually help people submit applications. They can drop off documents, answer questions, whatever is needed. And those dates will also probably continue into March as well, based on foot traffic that is coming into each site.
And you're literally having people go door to door on the island?
That is correct.
I think that's tremendous. Thank you. Yeah.
Good. Any other questions?
Just to, in a best case scenario, the process, an applicant comes in, there's a lot of bad tastes in people's mouth with the FEMA process and SBA loans. And I know the county is dealing with the same issues that the town has dealt with when it comes to that. In the best case scenario, what would be a time frame from time of application to time of acceptance?
Yeah, so if everyone's if their documents are complete when they submit the application, the entire eligibility review process takes about 2 weeks on average. And then from there, they'll start seeing an inspector come out to their home, start developing a scope of work, and then get it assigned to a contractor. So it would, for construction to start, a matter of a couple of months.
But what about someone that's already completed the work? Say a homeowner's already completed the work and they want to go through this program. Obviously, I'm assuming they'd have to have an inspector come out. There's receipts you'd have to show, things like that, to be able to qualify.
Yep.
How long would the funding take if they go through the process?
Yeah, so I would say about that same couple months time frame,
Okay.
because they'll have to go through the same eligibility process to make sure that they're otherwise eligible for the program. They're just won't need the construction piece. It'll be a matter of just issuing payment.
Okay. And I'm assuming that they would have to, whoever the applicant or whoever the tenant would be, would have to be vetted and be approved, and
That is
all of that
correct.
would be in
Yes,
place.
if it is a rental property. So I do want to clarify though, reimbursement for landlords is not eligible. It's reimbursed, only homeowners are eligible for the reimbursement.
Okay, see that I'm a little confused there. So if I own a home and I'm going to rent it to the vice mayor, I'm not eligible.
Correct. Yes. As a landlord that is renting the property, reimbursement is not eligible. That's only for homeowners who reside in the home as their permanent residence.
Okay. I was confused. I was,
Sorry about that.
see, now I'm really confused because
Yeah,
I
am
thought,
too.
so if you meet the 80% AMI, we'll just use the 54,000 for 2 people that live in a house. The only way you're going to get that up to 250,000 is if you're the homeowner living in it, you're not renting it to somebody. So it's really not anything to do with affordable housing or workforce housing.
So we need to clarify that you're right now talking about reimbursement for repairs already made.
Yes.
So a couple things here. Repairs are up to 250,000. Total reconstruction or elevation is up to 450,000. That determination will be made by the team that assesses the property after eligibility is determined. If we're talking about reimbursement for repairs already made, the reason landlords are not eligible is because there is no continuing unmet need in HUD's eyes. You are a for-profit operation, you had the means to restore your property and you've done so, and you're now going to lease that for revenue. So there is no unmet need. We're not able to fund that. If, on the other hand, you're a homeowner, HUD will accept that you still have ongoing need because you probably had to diminish your assets. You probably had to tap into your retirement account, what have you, because your income is so low, right? According to HUD, you still have an ongoing need. So that's the distinguishing factor there. Does that
Yeah,
make
no,
sense?
I understand it better. Now, how does that apply then to the 400,000 if you're going to start the construction? Is it the same rules apply then? If you have to be the homeowner, you couldn't construct a house for low to moderate income people to live in?
If you've not taken on that reconstruction project as the landlord because you don't have the means to do so, you can still qualify just like a homeowner would. The we're only talking about reimbursement where the landlord is not eligible. If you still have to undertake the project and your tenant qualifies or your prospective tenant will qualify, then you can still be eligible.
Oh, so you could still be eligible for that 400,000 or
450,000.
450,000?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now I understand.
Yeah, it's only for the reimbursement. And
Got
then one thing I also want to clarify, just to make sure everybody understands, the mortgages that go on the property amortize over the affordability period. So if we're talking about the 5-year period, it amortizes in equal installments over that period and is ultimately forgiven 100% at the end of the 5-year period. Just
Got it.
make
Understood.
While you're here, just or either one of you, we have a lot of folks who are permanent residents down here who live in condos, and our condos have suffered as much as anyone else. Is there any relief or potential relief for people who would live in a condo, and how would that work?
Yeah, absolutely. So as long as they own the unit, right, then they can apply as a homeowner, just like a standalone single family housing unit. So they would be eligible for rehabilitation.
And it would be rehabilitation just for their particular unit, not for the common areas?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, we're asking so many questions, but there's a lot of details in here that so with that 450,000, what if it's going to be 600,000 to build back with the cost of constructions? That obviously would be on the homeowner. Would that, or the landlord, whatever, would that then take them out of the program, or is it just, it has to be 450 or less? But I'm just trying to figure out, for design purposes, if someone's going to go through this program, if what they're designing is going to be more than that 450,000, how does that affect their eligibility?
Yeah. So if they are able to meet the gap for the 400 or the gap past whatever 450,000 is, then they can still participate in the program. If they're unable to meet it, then the case managers are going to work with them to try to see if there's other like nonprofit agencies or other assistance programs that they could leverage. Yeah.
If I could go back to the voluntary residential acquisition program, after it's purchased and the person is relocated, what happens to that property?
Yeah, the property is retained as green space. So the structure that was on it is demolished and then retained as green space either by the county, or if the property is located here on the island, we would work with the town to see if that was a property that you wanted to maintain.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Good point. Good question. Yeah, right. Any other questions?
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Nice job.
Thanks.
Next, we have a presentation, Resilient Lee. Mr. Harner.
Good morning, Mayor, council members, staff. Dave Harner, County Manager. Before we get started, I have with me Christine Brady, Assistant County Manager, and I also have Ben Abus, our Public Safety Director. He's also our point person for Resilient Lee. Today, we're just going to talk to you a little bit about the plan. Well, before we get in the presentation, which Ben's going to provide, we're just going to talk to you a little bit about the plan, where the county is, and the next steps. How the plan came about is the board created an advisory committee. That advisory committee was to work on the long-term recovery plan. A few months in, the board held a work session, and two things that came out of that was, that are one of them very important to you. The first one was to really have the county engaged about following the board's policies and direction, not taking away from anybody else, but making sure that some of the programs that the board had approved were included in the process. But the second thing that came out of that, more importantly, was the board wanted to ensure that the municipalities and other partners had autonomy and that they control their own destiny. So ultimately, the plan itself does not specify any specific area. It is, as Glenn mentioned, it is a global plan. Your resilient or your recovery plan is that component specific to you. and they should marry together. So that's how that is supposed to work collectively. The good thing about the long-term recovery plan is this: it was a lot of input from the public, so it was designed by our community, and then our branch members also with subject matter experts also were involved in those discussion points, and then ultimately through the RTF. So when you start to work on your recovery plan, it should marry up. It should marry depending on those initiatives. I think there's 43 initiatives, which cover housing, which we discussed already, but natural resources, infrastructure. So anything you do with that, this will be a component to help you because you've met that community outreach component. So I just wanted to touch on that before we started. So if you don't have any questions, I'd like to go ahead and turn it over to. Yes.
First of all, it's great that you're here. Thank you for being here. And I would be remiss to have someone with your stature here. Is there anything that you want to comment on before we get into the program here? I know you're here to talk about this, but because of your unique situation in Lee County, is there anything you want to convey to the folks here in Fort Myers Beach with respect to the South Bridge, to Estero Boulevard, the parks, anything that's happening in Fort Myers Beach? Because I know the county is very engaged in Fort Myers Beach, and we appreciate all your support and help. But since you're here, I wanted to give you the forum to give people an update on the various things that Lee County is doing here in Fort Myers Beach, if you would like to.
Yes, I definitely would. And honestly, I would like to ask Miss Brady to do that. She oversees Parks and Recreation, so she can talk to you about a lot of the parks programs.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Christine Brady, Assistant County Manager. Yeah, thank you very much for the question. Our Parks and Recreation team and our Facilities Construction Management team are working on all the properties right now that we have down at Fort Myers Beach. We're working through the FEMA PA process. So we're working very closely with FEMA. We meet with them on a weekly basis. The whole team meets with them on a monthly basis. And we're working on going through the process for Crescent Beach. I think you've all seen that, we're getting ready to finalize the cleanup of Crescent Beach, Lynn Hall, Fort Myers Beach Pier. So we're going through the design in the selection of the design companies that will be working with us for all of those projects. But we're also working with our community engagement team. To your question specifically, we do have a lot of public outreach wanting to know what the status is. So our community engagement communications team is going to be working on preparing an update on our website that will basically start to give timelines of where we are with the projects, what stage we're in, and then eventually be able to put more specific end dates in place for everybody so that we'll have a one-stop shopping on our website that will tie into our social media posts as well. That will be able to have municipalities as well as the public be able to go to those specific projects and see exactly what stage that we're in, what the next stage is, and where we believe to be with completion. So Parks and Rec had about $28 million worth of damage. There's pretty much not a park in Lee County that hasn't had some form of damage to it. Obviously,
is that 20 million aggregate for Lee County or for Fort Myers Beach?
28 million for Lee County Parks and Recreation. So you also had damages to your parks as well. So I'm just talking about 28 million just for Lee County Parks and Recreation alone. So that's really why we want to be able to put some type of community engagement piece together. Because it has impacted the entire county, and we really want folks to understand where we are in the process of getting everything repaired.
I appreciate that. You mentioned Crescent Park, and it sounds like that's close to being done. Do you have a sense as to what just so people know? It sounds like you're cleaning up make sure the sand doesn't have any debris in it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I mean, if you recall, we used Crescent Beach as a processing area, so it had already gotten beaten up from the storm, and then we beat it up a little bit more to use it as a processing area. So our DOT folks have been working with Parks and Rec folks as well as natural resources to go through that sand, dig down, and be able to put replacement sand on there with the idea of getting it back open. There's still, a project to design what ultimately that's going to look like, but our goal is to get that open here very shortly, so that our community can start enjoying that piece of property.
That's great. Thanks. And I see Dave standing up again. Dave, do you have any just an update on the South Bridge? Obviously, there's tremendous activity going there. Is that on schedule?
Yes.
And anything else you want to talk about with respect to the foot of the bridge? Anything else? Is there anything that keeps you awake at night with respect to Fort Myers Beach?
Well, there's a lot that keeps me awake
Don't
at
ask
night.
that question.
I qualified it for. I know there's a lot that keeps you awake, but anything with respect to Fort Myers Beach?
On Crescent Beach, just want to touch on one thing real quick is we're trying to open it as quickly as we can for temporary use. And then we will work with the community on what the ultimate goal looks like. I'm not sure that what we had there in the past is what we want to do in the future. So we'll obviously work with you in that process and with the community and what the next steps are there. When it comes to the Seafarers property itself, obviously we're working with the state for the oval. That's in the process right now. So we will work with the state, and once that's complete, again, we'll work collectively on what we do with the property at that point. Obviously, we want to work on some beautification. We also have the agreement with TPI for once the oval is complete, the state will put in the plantings, and then TPI will manage that for us. So that has gone through as well. The Big Carlos Pass is in the process. Everything is on target as we planned. The only difference is that the fishing pier is not included at this point. Doesn't mean it won't come along later. Obviously, we have hiccups when it comes to the federal requirements on permitting. So in order to keep the bridge on track, and it didn't align with the PD&E. So that's where we were with that piece as well. So
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Dave, before we run, have all the FEMA PA projects for the town of Fort Myers Beach that the county is in charge of, have they been obligated?
I don't believe so. No.
They haven't yet. Okay.
No.
Is there any, Estero Boulevard, obviously you guys just finished before the storm and has taken quite a beating with the debris trucks. And I noticed now that when we get heavy rain, it's building up again because the center has kind of sank. Is that part of a PA project through the county?
Yes, it is.
is. Okay.
DOT has a plan working on that process right now. So yes,
Okay. I figured as much. Just wanted to double check. Thanks, Dave.
thank you. And I forgot to start off with, I do appreciate the partnership with the town, more specifically with the town manager. We have a lot of projects in the county and the town has them, and there's a lot of joint projects that we're working together on. So if we didn't have that partnership, it would be that much harder. So again, thank you very much for that partnership.
Yeah, same. Just to give you an update too, you had talked about Crescent. You may or may not know, the property owners sat down with us to kind of come up with an idea that would work for everybody. We should be hearing from them soon. They all kind of agreed on just like a general concept. Once we see what that is, we'd like to sit down with you guys and because there's some parts of it that the county could be a partnership with Sure. the town to get that moving along a little faster. And I think the vision that the group had come up with, I think you'll find very appealing for part of the use of Crescent Park as well as Lynn Hall Park on the other side. So we'll be coming to you. We'll reach out to you once we get what their initial idea of what they're looking at to start that discussion.
Great. We'd be more than happy to sit down and work with the team.
Great. Thank you,
You were
sir.
referring to Times Square, right?
Didn't I say Times Square?
I don't recall you.
Oh, I'm sorry, Times Square.
I knew what you were talking about. Thank you. I'm going to ask Ben to come up and
Yeah,
with the presentation.
Hey, Ben.
Good morning, everybody. Ben Abus with Public Safety. I appreciate the opportunity to be here this morning and to talk to you about the Recovery Task Force and the work that's gone on over the last 13 to 14 months. As Dave mentioned, the Recovery Task Force was formed as an ad hoc committee to the Board of County Commissioners in December of 2022. And they have been diligently working on a really exhaustive process to be able to get to the point where we now have a draft plan that is before the Recovery Task Force for consideration, actually a week from tomorrow. So to take you through kind of the process, when the Recovery Task Force was formed, they really had three kind of core objectives that they wanted to see as part of the plan. The first was really centered around recovery. So establishing that comprehensive strategy that would allow the community to recover from Hurricane Ian and get us back to some restoration of a normal community life through a regional approach. And you'll hear the words regional approach over and over because really the focus of this plan is on this broad regional strategy that everyone can get behind to help address some of the issues and challenges that we all face. The second was to look at a common platform for how we can seek, sustain, and coordinate delivery of resources. There were a lot of efforts that are common, whether it's county efforts, nonprofit efforts, municipal efforts, a lot of things that we're all doing maybe in slightly different ways, but to a similar end game or goal. And so we wanted to see, are there ways that we should be collaborating or leveraging the work that we're doing as individuals to some broader, larger goal for the benefit of the community. And then finally, to address the resiliency, was to look at ways that we could work across jurisdictions and sectors to optimize those resources, look at more complicated long-term objectives, and better endure future impacts to the community, those next challenges. And the outcome was this plan that we have before us now, which really has started to align the community feedback, which has taken months to collect, with these viable, feasible, and desirable pathways. As Dave mentioned, there was a lot of community feedback. There were thousands of individuals that contributed to this through a number of different avenues. Of course, we had the Public Recovery Task Force meetings and the branch meetings, which were all open to the public and publicly advertised. We had our town halls that were conducted in April and May across the community. Thousands of people participated in those and gave us really a good ground truth and sense of what was really going on in the community. It's all well and good for us to speak to what's going on, or for other officials across the community to say what's going on from their perspective, but to hear from individuals directly impacted from the storm and to understand where they were was very, very beneficial. We had on the table conversations which were more topical and focused on specific subject matter areas. We had a lot of online feedback. In fact, the last round of the initiatives that were published in late November, early December, all of that was done through an electronic feedback mechanism on the Resiliently website. And again, we had a lot of feedback. Most of that feedback, more than 90% of that feedback, was simply reaffirming what was in the objectives, in the initiatives, and maybe providing more support for how those could be better suited or tailored to the needs of the community. The other thing that Dave touched on as well is, at the board's direction in August, we did some adjustments to the process, which included adding more county and municipal subject matter experts to review the plan. Up to that point, it was a lot of community feedback, and there were a lot of things that were very technical in nature. For instance, stormwater management or bridge construction and resiliency efforts around infrastructure. Those, in some cases, are areas where municipalities and the county, we have individuals that are working in that space every single day. And so the feedback that was provided through the municipalities and also through the county SMEs was valuable to make sure that that feedback and the content of those initiatives was really on point and will go to further serve the needs of the community as we look forward to how the plan will be implemented. Looking at the last 6 months or so, as I mentioned, there was that adjustment that we made in August. And so in September was really a lot of work between the county and municipal subject matter experts, the branches, the recovery task force, a lot of individuals providing input into that plan in September and October. In October, we really got to kind of the next major iteration of the initiatives. And then we started the process with the branches of looking at those initiatives and identifying where either there was overlap or opportunities to consolidate initiatives. And an example, I worked closely with Health and Social Services on that branch. We had an initiative that was focused on a crisis intervention center for mental health emergencies. And we had an objective or initiative that was centered around basically building a more robust system of mental health care in the community. And those are naturally, they fit hand in glove. There was no reason not to consolidate those. And so we went from more than 80 initiatives in that process to the final 43 that we have in the plan. The branches wrapped up their work in December with a final review of the draft initiatives. They did their final review, and then the RTF now has been tasked with the final review of the entire plan. As I mentioned, there's 43 initiatives, and these span across 8 different branches, which I'll touch on in just a moment. But it generally follows what's known as the National Disaster Recovery Framework, or NDRF. That's a FEMA framework that they use in their plans and as a recommended best practice to help ensure that the plans are aligned. These are very high level. And I think one of the things that's important to note, and Dave kind of touched on this as well, is that this plan is meant as a kind of a 50 or 60,000 foot view. Your local recovery plan, which I know you've been working closely with FEMA Community Assistance to start the process of developing that. That's more of that 10,000 foot view, kind of on the ground level of the actions that would be taken. This is the broad overview of the region and the county and what that is going to look like from a regional perspective, but your individual actions are really focused on your individual recovery plan.
Say, Ben,
Yes, sir.
we were told that, and we didn't know this when we were up there talking with HUD, that the county had a CDBG plan already that evidently the town back in 2019 or 2020 did not participate in or chose not to participate in. Well, is this a similar plan to that, or is it an addition to that plan, or is it replacing that plan?
So this plan specifically this is not related to CDBG DR or CDBG.
Okay.
And I can ask Jeannie Sutton to address the existing CDBG programs.
Yeah, so the CDBG plan that you're referring to is entitlement funds, which are managed by the Department of Human and Veteran Services.
Okay.
So that's an annual allocation received from HUD. The town gets, as part of their urban county participation agreement with the county, gets a small portion, around $30,000 annually from that entitlement funds. And there were a couple of years that the town elected not to participate and receive those funds.
That's going to change, I think, but.
I think the most important thing on this slide is really the third bullet there, which is that these initiatives are really meant to help promote collaboration across jurisdictional boundaries and to help reinforce the needs of the local community. So for instance, there are initiatives in hardening infrastructure. And so if you are going for whether it's a grant program or whatever type of FEMA, any type of funding you're looking for, you would be able to say this is in our local town recovery plan, and it's also supported by these initiatives in the broader resilient Lee plan as well. And in addition to the plan, which is it's more than 200 pages, it's a lengthy read. We've had our discussions on Teams, and I appreciate the work that you're doing to quickly come up to speed and join us on the RTF. But in addition to those 200 pages, if you get through that, we have 400 pages of grants and other funding opportunities. And so the idea is that once you identify those initiatives that you're doing work in, whether it's infrastructure or workforce training, whatever that is, each of those initiatives has dozens of opportunities that have been pre-identified for grant funding to help offset the cost of those, so that none of these are hopefully directly just 100% wholly funded by local resources, but rather there are federal and state programs, in some cases nonprofit programs, that we can go after to be able to offset those costs. Yes, sir.
On that issue, kind of a broader question, maybe Dave would want to comment on this. I've heard Commissioner Wayne publicly say it many times that I think this is really the foundation for potential additional federal funding to come. Has there been any indication as to whether that's going to be forthcoming at this point, or is it too early in the process?
I think it's too early in the process. Once we have the finalized plan and it's ready, there are a number of different programs that I think are very easy connections between this plan and those federal funding opportunities. I was on a call last week on an EPA grant opportunity that is a natural fit for 5 or 6 of these initiatives, and they're very interested in it once we get to the point where the plan has been adopted and we start to identify those specific projects. So as we start going through, I think the next 6 to 12 months, it'll be easier to identify.
And I think he was even alluding to potential further appropriations down the line from the
wanna speak
federal
to the-
government as well that were significant, if
Yeah.
I remember correctly. Yeah.
Yes, sir. So certainly additional appropriations are possible. I will say one of the things that often happens in the wake of a large natural disaster like this is you get follow-on supplemental funding, supplemental appropriations bills. And I think early on, there was an expectation that we probably would see that given the magnitude of Hurricane Ian. Given the developments in DC that we currently see, that has become much less certain. So, whether or not that's going to happen is a huge open question, but I think this kind of effort will help us state the case and hopefully advocate to draw down some additional
I
appropriations.
understand. Thank you. Yeah.
And to that end, that's one of the things that we have started to do is as we're looking at, whether it's state or federal appropriations, where does it fit within our local plans, but also where is it within the Resilient Lee plan? And how can we build further support by identifying all these documents? Again, the Resilient Lee plan having thousands of members of the community coming out to provide feedback and input. It has in it a lot of community feedback and input to say these are the things we want to see our local governments pursue.
So I have a question,
Yes, ma'am.
because I know we're meeting next Friday.
Mhm.
And the plan, I believe at that meeting is to accept the plan from Lee County. Are you also wanting to see how Fort Myers Beach dovetails into that plan at that meeting, or does that come later? Where in the process does that fit?
I can speak. So I think that will come later in the process, especially as you start to work through your local recovery plans. And I work closely with the folks at FEMA Community Assistance. I know that they've got contractors that are working on your local plans, I believe. And so, in fact, we've shared this, the draft document and the final draft that is going before the RTF. We've shared that with them with the intention to ensure that the plan that they're developing and that they're working closely with the town on is going to very closely align with what is identified in the Resilient Lee plan. We want to make sure, and one of the things that Dave spoke to is that there's no conflicts between the two.
And I just want to clarify that Friday, hopefully the task force will recommend to not only the county, but to all the municipalities and other partner school district, the plan. Your specific plan does not have to come back to the county or the RTF. So your recovery plan doesn't. We would work in conjunction to ensure that whatever we have in connectability, that we will work collectively on that in each of our plans, but you don't have to bring that back to the county. We don't expect,
Okay.
the board never expected that.
Okay, thank
Thank
you.
Any other questions on that? So as I mentioned, there were 8 branches. Again, these follow the federal framework, and you can see them listed there. Each of those branches had branch leads that were identified, and then generally 10 to 12 SMEs from the community, subject matter experts, who worked with the branch leads and with our partners at the Collaboratory and Haggerty to be able to develop the content of the plan, which is again before the RTF next Friday. So as Dave mentioned, the plan adoption is likely the next step, and we would encourage, if there's other questions that come up, we're available to help address those. Again, each jurisdiction has autonomy in this process. So if you chose to adopt the plan, you could adopt the plan wholly, or you could identify individual parts that you wanted to adopt. But again, that's the autonomy of each municipality. And finally, we intend to take this to the Board of County Commissioners on March 19th, if that does move forward next Friday. So we are intending to bring this back before the board at the second meeting in March for their consideration as well. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
I do have one question. So this kind of ties into the last thing. Is all of this, I assume this all costs money. This all takes time. Is the funding for this, is that all in that, one of the first slides you had it's close to $80 million in administration and planning that have gone into. Is this all coming out of that $1.1 billion HUD fund?
So
Or how is it being funded?
I can speak to this effort specifically. So this effort was specifically a separate task order. The plan itself over the last 14 months is a little over $2 million to develop this plan, plus the staff time that we have invested in it. It is very important to us, number one, that it's a plan that is actionable. It provides some degree of opportunity for individual municipalities or the county to be able to act on it. But also that it is based and rooted on the community feedback, which we were able to obtain through that process in April and May. But it was funded through, I believe, the CDBGDR funding, the planning funds, and that task order was separate, was allocated back in December of 2022.
Okay. Any other questions for Ben? Or Glenn? Or Dave or anyone? All right.
Okay. Thank you all very much.
All right. Thank you for taking your time to come out.
Thank you.
Beat the traffic.
Appreciate it.
Next, we have a presentation, the mooring field, an update on the town mooring field.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hey, good morning, Chad Schutz, town staff. Just while I have a chance, I'd like to say thank you to Lee County staff, both for recent ILA changes that they made for our beach renourishment project, as well as all the technical expertise that Steve Boutel, Mike Campbell, and Leslie Haynes from their marine operations team has given us as marine operations over the years. So just wanted to do that right now as I have the opportunity. So we'll wait for Jacob to
Morning, Austin.
oh, yeah, here, go ahead, Wow.
Austin Gilchrist, town of Fort Myers Beach, harbor master.
So while Jacob's bringing this up, we just wanted to talk about the mooring field. We're making progress and we have some grant opportunities, time windows that are fast approaching. So we wanted to squeeze in while we have time before the windows close to talk about the grant opportunities that are coming up and the Matanzas mooring field needs. And upcoming needs for the mooring field. All right, pretty shot from this morning. Sunrise over the Matanzas Pass mooring field.
Wait a minute. That was from this morning?
Yes, sir.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah, thank you. Well, thank you to for Austin and his drone flying capabilities and photographic eye.
I just watch it on Facebook.
Is it the arrow here? How do I? Arrow?
Yeah, I'm watching. It's going.
It's the slowest sunrise ever.
While we're waiting, I just want to give a shout out to the current Anchorage Advisory Committee. We have a very vibrant Anchorage Advisory Committee, and they're very active. They're doing great work, and they partner well with both Chad and Austin. And I just wanted to commend them for their efforts because they've spent a lot of time thinking about these issues and working with Chad and Austin.
Absolutely.
You sure there's not one slacker on there?
That the one slacker you're alluding to is a leader on the committee, and we're very thankful to have her service.
So here we have one of our a new exhibit encompassing the expanded mooring field. We have the west field to the left, the bridge in the middle, and then our central field and east mooring field. We are up to 8. Yep, we're up to 77 systems operational out of the 89 systems. In between there, let's see.
Are the ones that non-operational, are they in one section or are they spread out?
So we have 6 that are on the west mooring field with a conflict with U.S. Coast Guard's opinion of where the channel is and where the systems are, and we're working that out with our engineer. And then the other 6 systems are all in the east field.
Yeah, so all in the east field, we do have some obstructions, whether it be debris covering up the anchoring system or sunken vessels that would need to be removed in order to put in new systems.
Okay.
So dinghy dock and amenities in the middle labeled. It's been a great map that Coastal Engineering has provided us to show our patrons where the facilities are at. So recovery update for the field. Again, 6 systems out for the Coast Guard theoretical conflict, and 6 systems out for derelict vessels and debris impediments, working through both of those. But 77 systems as of January 31st are operational. American Underwater Contractors finished that up. Hats off to Austin's team, who actually installed 35 systems themselves. Did a great job to get that going in early January, and then American Underwater Contractors, as their staff became available to come and reinstall and provide the additional systems at the end of January. So we are up and running. The debris and bathymetric assessment is also complete by our engineering contractors. Debris targets have been identified, and again, hats off to Austin and his staff for clearing debris targets on their service boat. Herculean task, and they've been doing a great job at getting out of the water where they can, clearing systems so that they can become available for the boaters to rent. We're also working with Officer Chris Nice and Lee County Sheriff Marine Operations to clear those derelict vessels and free up those additional systems to be available. Just a reminder, Matanzas Inn is providing our bathroom, shower, and laundry amenities and a mooring area for our pump out boat. Our dinghy dock facility update, the temporary dinghy dock has been installed. Again, Herculean effort by Austin to rig up a way to get that the ramp and the docks pulled over. A big thank you again to Snookbite for providing that temporary dock at a gift price. We have potable water and trash disposal available, parking facilities at MP4, MP3, and MP2, and MP1, MP1 as well. And we are still, the permanent dock facility has been permitted, is my understanding from our engineers, and we are just awaiting that engineering design, which should be available anytime now. So why are we here today? We're here to talk about dockside sanitary connection. Our pump out boat holds about 1,000 gallons of black water and needs to be pumped out these days about every week. And then we need a mooring facility for a pump out vessel, our mooring field service vessel, and we also have a community service vessel. It's also known as the enforcement boat. Right now, we're paying, I believe, $650 a month to moor our pump out vessel. Just to give you an idea of what that cost is just on current operations. That's part of the Matanzas Pass rental agreement that we've had in place for several months now. So
does that include the pump out of that 1,000 gallons every month, or is that an additional?
That's an additional cost.
What is that? Just curious.
So that's $375 a week, but that is reimbursable from our CVA grant. So that pump out is not a cost per se. It is reimbursable. 25 25% match
Yeah.
on that pump out.
Okay.
And also, again, as I said before, the grant opportunities, the windows for applying for those grants are coming up shortly. So staff has done a preliminary feasibility analysis looking at all of the towns. I don't like using that word all. I may have missed one. Who knows? But all the waterfront properties that could be used for a dockside sanitary connection and town vessel mooring facility. Just kind of going from north to south, North Tower, Bayside Park, MP4, which is under the bridge, Miramar Street, Virginia Avenue, Bayview Drive, Delmar Avenue, Chapel Street behind the Old Town Hall, Bay Oaks Recreational Facility, Mound House, Hercules Drive, Coconut Drive, South Tower, and Amberjack Drive off of Estrelita.
So you're looking for a place to just moor the boat, not necessarily run the operation, just a place to moor the boat.
So it would be a dockside sanitary connection and a town vessel mooring. So what that means is a place where we can
Right.
moor our
And pump out the
vessel
boat.
and then plug it in to the sewer system in a closed system so that it's going away.
Is that a permanent fixture then there or?
It would be we're proposing a permanent facility for a pump and the mooring areas. Yes, ma'am.
When you say facility, you're not talking about an operation facility. It's just a facility
about
that
boat-
houses.
A boat lift next to a pump that is about, yay big by yay high.
Mhm.
And then an underground, 4-inch or 6-inch pipe connection to the sewer.
Has the Anchorage Advisory Committee
We have
rendered an
talked about,
opinion on?
we have talked about it, and they have given their support for looking into doing this feasibility and looking into a location for this. I can let Austin talk right now about the need for such a pump out facility.
Yeah, so basically what we're doing now is we're relying on the local establishments and basically the marinas to help us out in offloading when we can. We are having a sewage truck come down once a week at the cost of $350 to unload 1,000 gallons a week that we are intaking through the fields and the marinas. The problem that we're having is the truck is loud and it causes a disturbance of where we're offloading. And then again, we're relying on local marinas and the mercy of their scheduling and how they need to operate in order for us to come in and offload what we're doing now. We're just looking for something where we can be self-contained and not have to rely on anybody else or anything in order to provide our services that we're currently providing.
And this would pump directly into our current sewage system. It wouldn't be a separate tank. It wouldn't be anything.
No. So what we're doing, we're using peristaltic pumps, which is low pressure pumps that move high volume. So there wouldn't be any pressurization to the system. It would just be dumping sewage into the sewage line, much like when you flush a toilet. It's no more
Right.
pressure than that. Lee County sewer
right.
system, yeah.
Just wanted to be as clear as possible. So if people have questions, they understand. But
Yeah,
we're not
and-
talking about building
No.
a building like.
No, not at all.
was
And like
discussed
you
before.
said, the
Not
pump is
enough room.
probably 3 foot by 2 foot by 2 foot. It's a motorized high amperage electrical pump on a mechanical peristaltic operation with mechanical rollers. Low sound, very high economics, and everything is enclosed through cam locks. Nothing is exposed to the air or anything like that. So there's no smell, there's no noise or any disturbances of that nature.
I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I'm gonna put you on the spot.
Okay.
You are the expert here and you are the harbor master of these locations. What makes the most sense as far as town staffing? What would be if you had your brothers, where would be the ideal location for you?
Okay, so basically we went through each location and we wrote the pros and cons on each one, eliminating exactly what we're doing. But I'll let Chad go more into that because we did break it down with each property and how it will,
Okay, good.
the pros and cons of that.
Didn't mean to get ahead of you.
Yeah, no worries. So, and just to dovetail into what Austin was saying, over the fourth quarter, so October, November, December, just with the limited capacity that we had and pumping out anchored vessels as well, we pumped over 5,000 gallons of black water from those anchored vessels and moored vessels. Instead of going into the back bay, that went into a proper sewage treatment facility. So, and that was just at a limited capacity. So you can imagine, what kind of volumes we're ramping up as we get to full capacity. So to your questions, Mayor. So we did our feasibility analysis and looked at our needs, what we need for that sanitary connection and vessel mooring, and looked at all these properties. So why we picked these properties, they're either town owned or in a right of way. They have waterfront access, and they all have proximity to residential zoned properties. It's just the nature of the beast living on the barrier island where we're at. So that was a commonality along all locations. What do we need to establish such a facility that we're proposing? So adequate space for mooring up to 2 to 3 vessels, the ability to connect to Lee County sewer system, the ability to power that peristaltic pump, no conflicting uses or existing facilities that would be in the way of such the proposed facility, space for town parking, 1 or 2 spaces for us to park and get to the spot, and proximity to the mooring field. We don't want to have to do a half-hour haul just to go pump out. It's gas, time, et cetera, cost that we'd rather avoid. This is a staff-only facility. We're not proposing any public to be there. We're not proposing any dinghy dock to be there. So alleviating those neighborhood concerns of having transient boaters, in their neighborhood, kind of thing that's been a concern in the past.
Is one of the, I don't remember seeing the map, is one of the locations where the old kayaking launch was on the backside of Bay Oaks here?
Yeah, well,
Is that one of those locations on there?
yes, sir.
Okay.
So as we looked at these needs and looked at all of these locations, we started eliminating what's not going to work. So North Tower, it's an odd shaped lot. It's kind of a pie lot, and whenever you get into permitting a dock facility, you have to look at riparian lines and the way that those riparian lines run into that canal. It's only a 30-foot water frontage, and the angle of the riparian lines cuts that down even further as you go into the canal, and the canal is only a 75-foot canal. So you're having conflict with impeding navigation and just the ability to permit a big enough docking facility for our pump out vessel, and that would only be 1 vessel. And to cut into the North Tower, we have 2 outfalls there, so it gets real complicated real quick there. Unfortunately, that was something we've been excited about, but it's not ideal. Bayside Park, again, mooring area issues with Snug Harbor, and
I don't want to cut you off, Chad, but I want to make sure we have enough time to get through all the rest of the things. On this, if everybody's okay with it, can we just talk about the ones that would work? We don't necessarily need to know why the other ones don't work. If they don't
Sure.
work, they don't work.
No worries, even better. Thank you. So, process of elimination, got rid of those. So we have our 3 that we're looking at. So we have Virginia Avenue. It is a right of way that elbows into the canal there. Its pros: you have 50 feet of waterfront, and it is right at the mooring field for a quick out. It does have mangroves there that you can mitigate. That's permittable, happens all the time. And you could cut in and moor 2 vessels straight into there. A con on that one is we would need to go through that right-of-way vacation process, which can complicate things. The Chapel Street property on the back of the old town hall, pros is, again, proximity to the mooring field. Once you get out of that canal, you're basically in the field. You have, it's a town-owned property already. It's also, we own that submerged land that's there. So we have the ability to cut into there and create additional space for a mooring facility to be there. So don't be distracted by the kind of the rough edges. You can seawall that and make it a more linear shoreline. Over 250 feet of waterfront. And we can use that land that we purchased as a grant match, which is a big plus. It's adjacent to the old town hall property, which we also own, proximity to town facilities at Bay Oaks. There's also a lift station there, which in talking to our Director of Public Works and Utilities is a big plus for the sewer connection. The cons, you have some mangrove mitigation. Again, that's not a showstopper. It's just additional cost, probably 0.1 or 0.2, 0.01 or 0.02 credits. It's on the order of thousands of dollars to mitigate for that, but again, not a showstopper. And then there's also some canal dredging that would need to be excavated out of there, along with again making that shoreline, excavating it out so you could put in some mooring facilities. And then we have Bay Oaks. So again, proximity to the mooring field. It's a town-owned property, as well as there's right-of-way in there. So there would be that con of having to go through that vacation process. There is over 500 feet of waterway. However, all of that waterway is privately owned submerged land. So that's a con. And it's also, the proximity to the recreational use there. It's a closed system. We're not expecting any disturbance to the recreation that occurs there, but something to think about. But having said that, it is adjacent to town facilities, which is a plus. So that is the three again. So
that's not the area that I was talking about, though. I'm talking about, you go through the Matanzas Pass Preserve back there. That the town doesn't own that, right?
That's Lee County, correct. I thought you were talking about, there's a dock right at the bottom right there, or bottom left of the red rectangle. There's a little dinghy dock. I thought that's what you're referring to.
No, I was just thinking because of the back bay,
The
where
observation
kayak-
pier.
Yeah, you're right on the channel already.
That's all county
the
land.
county owned.
Yes, sir.
Could that be a possibility if the county was willing to do an interlocal agreement with us to make that work, or would it be something that's too?
Yeah, anything's possible. If we start talking about county, or we could start talking
I
about
get it.
other lands that are available. It's just a little bit more complicated, and we're
Sure.
just trying to keep it as simple as possible.
On the Bay Oaks location, Chad, I see a pretty elongated red square. Can it be anywhere within that red square?
Theoretically, but it would just depend on how we're looking at development and trying to minimize disturbance to that mangrove system. Unlike the other mangrove systems, which are isolated systems, you're going to get a very low, they call it UMAM, Uniform Mitigation Assessment Method, where those mangroves are very poor. They're not in pristine condition, whereas these mangroves, they may be assessed a little bit higher. So we'd want to minimize the disturbance to those mangroves, and where, just thinking about the access, proximity to other facilities. But I would assume,
Yeah, I'm thinking about minimizing the impact to the residential folks on the canal as well by having it further out closer to the bay. But it looks like it's possible. I just was curious because it's a pretty long swath there in that red square.
And that entire canal is not privately owned, right? Anything outside the yellow squares is
the entire canal is submerged
private.
land.
Well,
As I was going up, I'm not sure, maybe at the top it may open up, but everything that you see adjacent to that red
there-
okay.
It's
rectangle.
privately owned, Mr. Mayor, but
Yeah.
he's a pretty interesting character who bought the submerged land, and I think that's something the town could acquire. As painful as it would be, it'd be possible to acquire those rights, and I think that would be a great relief to the property owners who live along that. We rented during the storm on that canal, and a lot of those property owners are very upset with the owner of the submerged land because he, hate to use the word, extorts. But anytime you try to make an improvement to your pier, he tries to extort money from them. And so to acquire that submerged land rights would serve a number of public benefits. Plus, I think it's potentially, you open that Chapel Street, the mayor and I had the pleasure of going through that nightmare when the previous town manager tried to put an uplands facility back there. I know this is not an uplands facility.
That's why I was
Don't want to
cautioning you using the word facility.
Don't want to open that can of worms again. And that's why the Bay Oaks, maybe particularly since it's on your list, is a possibility, maybe the most intriguing. I think I'd have to go
Again,
look
this
at
is just, it's boat lifts, and if you didn't know what it was, you would think it's just another station. It's a very minor impact,
Right.
and things that would go all but unnoticed.
But having been in public life for a long time, it's the old camel's nose under the tent concern. And I think the folks that went through that discussion last time, to put it mildly, would be sensitized if we came forth with another proposal. Just food for thought. I know from a practical standpoint it makes sense, but that Bay Oaks piece may be the best option. I think. I don't. Maybe the Virginia.
Well, I remember, the conversations, as you guys well know, that the conversations were about the transient traffic, people coming in from the mooring fields and, getting supplies. And that was a
Yep.
bigger concern of theirs.
That's why we eliminated that.
Yeah. And I think many of them said, if it's just the town boat, that'd be one thing. And obviously, another issue that they had was the mitigation of the, taking out the mangroves and the protection and the privacy and things like that.
I think, to that point, if that is a concern of the residents, taking them out and then making our shoreline and then restoring it with mangroves is an option. You can work in a living shoreline over there.
Well, and I think that the biggest concern that they had was because of the two-way traffic that was going to be needed,
Mhm.
the mangroves all along that would have had to been mitigated. And that was where there wasn't so much on the end here on the private property the town owns, but it was the need to have to open that up. Would there be a need to do anything with the mangroves along that canal to be able to allow the traffic through there?
If we're going to do it right, there would be excavation of uplands, installation of a seawall, removal of the mangroves, installation of boat lifts.
Just down here, not the entire canal, though.
Oh, absolutely correct.
That's what I was trying to get at.
Just
It would be just
along,
on our property down here. It
correct, at
wouldn't
the
be
end
all
of the
along
canal.
the canal.
correct.
Because
And
before it was going to be the entire length of the canal to be able to allow two boats to pass through there.
yeah, we're not proposing any public access, no dinghy dock facilities. And, if you're asking me and you're also asking our town engineer, this is his recommendation and my recommendation as well.
Not to steal your camel nose under the tent, but being a nose, I'm sure the question is going to be, is there any smell that comes from that boat as it's going up and down? I have a feeling that question will be raised.
Yeah,
Should
so
this
the-
be something
No,
discussed?
everything's closed in systems and we have sanitary procedures that we follow by. It is raw sewage, so we do have to be pretty precautious for what we do, but everything is closed lock. There's nothing traveling through open air systems. Everything's on a cam lock system that's got gaskets in it, so everything is airtight. Any leaks or anything like that that we have in our system is identified immediately. We lose pressure and things like that.
Mhm.
So any maintenance and stuff like that that may cause smell is eliminated immediately. And then we do have spill kits and cleanup kits, and we do have procedures in place in case of spills and things like that. But as of today, we've had no sewage spills or anything like that. We may have had a hose pop a leak or something like that in it, but nothing major to where we've had to call or boom off anything of that nature.
In having this dock with the pump out feature would allow you to not have to let the stuff sit inside for
Yeah.
a week. I mean, you could dump it as you receive it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the problem we're having now is having things like that stored in contained areas for any amount of time causes problems, causes maintenance issues, clogs and things like that. So offloading it immediately is our priority that we do have. And then disinfecting the tank after each discharge as well. We do have disinfectants that we do treat the tank with. And other than that, it is a closed system, so you don't get any smell.
Just to the town manager and to our director of operations. I know the town hall dynamic is fluid, and I'm wondering the particular property where the old town hall was, if at some point the town decided to sell it for whatever reason, having a pump out facility right behind that property is probably not, it does not enhance the value of that property. I wonder, and I only see this because Bay Oaks is in your top 3 as an option. The Bay Oaks property seems to have the most minimal impact to both the value of that property, of the old town hall property, the pushback from residents. And it's on your list. If it wasn't on your list, I wouldn't be pushing it, but you guys put it on as a possibility. Do you all, does that raise a concern for you in terms of eventually selling that land? If that ever happens?
I think It does, now that you bring it up, it's, you know, a separated property that's not part of the original town hall property. So I think, you know, we probably could, you know, mitigate any concern because of the lack of a physical structure there. But, you know, I'm kind of liking the Bay Oaks property as well.
Tell me again, Chad, why the Bay Oaks property? I'm sorry, Frankie, were you going to say something?
Yeah, we've looked into both of these canal systems, and I guess I don't share the exact same concerns over the chapel property as was brought up, only because it was bought separately from the original property. If the town at any future date would go ahead and separate that and sell the front off where the old town hall was, that's still commercial boulevard property. It doesn't go as mixed residential, which the back bund was. So it's not going to take away the overall value of what you think may potentially be there. It does give a very good serviceable outlet for them. On the other hand, so does the Bay Oaks property.
I think the challenge, Frankie, is just historically, long before your time, that property was purchased with the purpose of putting an uplands facility there, which caused tremendous alarm amongst the residents, understandably so. So we avoid all that if we go to Bay Oaks, or at least most of it, particularly if we could put it as close to the bay as possible. And then we could always sell the parcels together separately, however we want to do it, if we decide to sell it.
And we've already, Andy, myself, and staff have talked about several scenarios.
Yep.
So they all come into play.
But if this, from your professional look at this, the Bay Oaks is at least an option. That would be my preference, I think.
You know, I think to make it a little, we don't know what we don't know. And what I mean by that is we don't know if they both have properties that are going to be adjacent to this, no matter which canal, if one of these two, or Virginia for that matter. I think it would behoove the town, those that are on tropical shores, to at least, there's not that many, to at least have a conversation with them of this is what it could potentially look like, this is what it would be, and see if they have an alarm with it. I mean, if this is the preferred spot based on the experts telling us this is the best spot to do it, having a conversation, if they all hate it like they did the upland facility, then we have a conversation. But I mean, there's not that many doors to knock on and say, this is what we're looking at doing, send them out, you know, get the information in front of those most affected. And if they don't have an issue with it, being that there's not going to be transient people coming back and forth, it's just going to be town owned. They're not going to lose their mangroves in the back. I mean, there's a lot of benefit here that I think, recalling what the arguments that they had, has been eliminated by not having the actual facility there, just a place to park the boat. So I think having a conversation with those homeowners, and if they don't have an issue with it, then this could move along fairly quickly.
I think that makes common sense, Mr. Mayor, but I had a conversation with one of the leaders of the neighborhood because this was discussed at an Anchorage Advisory Committee. And I had some feedback from one of the folks who was involved in the last discussion, heated discussion, and they are not at all supportive of that on Chapel. So
Okay.
just food for thought. I know it's a fair suggestion, but I don't want to give it too much optimism on that because I think it's going to be a challenge. And
If I may, this was the same challenge that the town had with the expansion of the mooring field, was the negativity and the misinformation of what exactly we were doing. And staff did go ahead and knock on doors and go from door to door with the presentation package and actually present what we were doing and just eliminate all the falsehoods. I know last time that we did try approaching it, there was just a lot of what ifs and there wasn't any actually facts being debated. It was pretty much just the neighborhood basing off of each other's argument or what they thought was going to happen, since we didn't have anybody communicating them with the facts that was actually going to happen in that area. So that's where we lost it all. And I think that's exactly how we did move forward with the expansion, was knocking on the doors and explaining all the falsehoods and stuff of all the perceptions that was going on.
Yeah, I think in any three of these, it would make sense to go to all three and talk to them and try to figure out the path of least resistance, I guess would be the easiest way to do it. And that may help alleviate some of the discussions, or just, as you said, Austin, I think people just want to be communicated with. They want to understand exactly what is going to be going on there. Not, you know, we know in social media world, you know, this turns into a gallon in about 2 seconds. So having the right information and talking to the three streets specifically that you think would be the best, just to see who likes it, hates it, absolutely not. And it'll make the discussion, I think, through the Anchorage Advisory Committee and the ultimate recommendation to the council go much smoother.
Mr. Mayor, would you allow us to get together with staff, develop an approach for those 3 locations, reach out to those constituents, maybe bring them in for a mini town hall, present our plan to them as staff, and then they can take that to the Anchorage Committee and then to council?
I think it's an excellent idea.
Okay, then we'll make that happen.
And
As
I,
long as
don't-
everybody's-
and I don't know you mean it this way, but when you say present our plan, I would say present a suggested
Yes,
plan.
sir.
Yeah, this
Yes.
is not, this is, this is no way in stone at this point, but I think it's a
Yeah.
good concept. Yeah.
Nothing has been decided.
I guess my question is, assuming the probable all 3 don't want it in their backyard, then what do we do?
Well, then, I mean, to me, I'll just go first. I guess to me, it makes sense. It helps town staff. It helps. I mean, it's not, to me, it's being around boats my entire life. I understand that this is not a huge intrusion. Anybody that's ever had to go use a pump out in a marina understands it's very minimal. There's no noise. There's no, it's not a lot of work. It's not a lot. I shouldn't say not a lot of work. You guys have to do the work, but it's not a lot of intrusion into a private neighborhood. We don't get complaints about the marinas because boats are coming in and pumping out their boats. So I think just being able to understand exactly what you're going to do, maybe have some sort of little bit of rendering. And I think, but just having that mini town hall and presenting, this is what it would look like. This is all the little details that, so there's no second guessing. There's no what's going to happen. I think you will have at least one, if not more, of the locations understanding that they could probably get behind this, which would make the decision much easier. But I think what you're asking is if all 3 of them say absolutely not, we're going to have a discussion because this makes sense and it's something that needs to be done if we're going to have a mooring field.
Yeah, if you've been, at the pump out whenever the truck is there, it is a disruptive process. And I just don't see that truck pump out as sustainable, especially as we build out downtowns more crowded. I just feel like we need a solution, but I appreciate all the feedback.
And to the mayor's point, you'll never be accused of over communicating.
Yes, sir.
So getting together with those neighbors and sharing your vision, I think is a great idea.
So just moving on. So we have these grant opportunities that are coming up, and each one of these has a different facet in what we're talking about. We have the FWC state grant. Eligible things are boat lifts and mooring facilities. So this is mid-January to mid-March, approaching very quickly, which is the impetus for us trying to get direction on this. But we will, yes, ma'am.
Do you have to have like the location identified when you go in for these grants?
That's what our engineer is asking. Like we've been trying to get this done, and he's like, we need, everything's competitive, and the more shovel ready you are, the more competitive you are. And we'd obviously be more in the feasibility, permitting, and design stage for this round. But even for that, getting direction on location is needed, is what I'm hearing from our.
So that public input then has to happen really quickly. Okay.
And I don't want to belabor this, Chad, but tell me, I know we skipped through these, but why did not the Mound House work?
It's a tourist destination, and it also has impediments with regards to its grant funding for additional uses. I can talk to Jeff about that, but
I only say that because when we use this pump out boat, as Austin knows, it's a very pro clean water environmental effort and service that the town provides in an effort to prevent and discourage people from pumping in directly into the bay. So it has an environmental theme to it.
Sure.
And that's consistent with some of the things that the Mound House does. Just food for thought.
Yeah, my understanding is the purchase of that land came with impediments for additional uses, and it being a cultural and historical, and the reason why it was purchased, adding additional uses may infringe upon the grant, but we will explore that. Absolutely.
Gotcha. All right. Thank you.
We had the same thought over at the Mound House. So again, fast approaching. So this is a federal grant, not as ideal as the previous one. As you see, the match. The other part of this grant is we could use land purchase for the purpose of a facility as a match, and also as a to make our grant application more competitive. So that again, land purchased. I don't know if Bay Oaks, because we own it, if we could make that same grant match with Bay Oaks, but it's something we will explore. WCIND, or we send, we're looking at that to our service boat, service vessel purchase. Our service vessel right now is, I can let Austin talk about a service vessel and what he's currently operating with, and what we would like to move towards.
Now, what did Frankie do?
Yeah, so we operate pretty much self-sustained in what we do, whether it be maintenance or upkeep of the field. We have a 3-man dive team, all qualified advanced rescue divers. We all go down and utilize our maintenance boat for pretty much debris removal, installation, a dive platform, as well as heavy hauling and any other, I guess, services that may need to be done. Right now, we're running like a 50-horse Evinrude. It's not in the best condition. With these grants here, that's how we could apply. They would help us out with any matching and any funds that we may need to help maintain our field and the navigable ways the navigable marking signs that we have in our area. Basically, we were operating with
Austin, hold on a second. I just want to make sure, Jacob, we're still live? Okay.
Yeah, we also operate a small skiff that we do all of our shallow water work in. We also do inspections and enforcement on that as well. And then we also have our CVA provided pump out boat, which is a 28-foot, I guess, a custom made pump out USA boat with a 150 Suzuki on it that holds 1,000 gallons. And it itself has a diaphragm pump, electrical diaphragm pump that we pump with.
So again, and just ending in the Clean Vessel Act, it's something that we're already participating in with our pump out vessel, the purchase, the maintenance, staff salary to operate and maintain it, as well as paying for those pump outs via the truck cost for that.
So your optimal grant there, the first one that's due by March, even if you were able to have the town hall with the neighborhoods, is it even feasible to get it through the approval process before?
I never say never. So we're gonna give it a good college try, and we'll talk to the neighborhoods and work with the town manager and our operations director to make it happen.
Okay. Any other questions for Chad or Austin? All right. Move on. You all good?
Yep, all good. Thank you for your
I
feedback.
do have one question.
Yes,
and
ma'am.
I don't know if you even know this off the top of your head, but when that whole mooring field is in total operation, what kind of an income does that bring to the town versus the expenses of this? I mean, is there a net income that we?
Yeah, I've done some projections. I'd rather have those numbers in front before I say a number. And we can. I've been promising the Anchorage Advisory Committee to put those numbers in front of them. I have done some projections based on our current fees and different occupancy rates based on season. I'll let Austin talk to.
We have asked Joe to come in and present before the Anchorage Advisory Committee to see what the expenses are, see what the revenue is, with the goal being to balance, to have it be self-sustaining. But by statute, it's not allowed to be profitable, but it's certainly allowed to break even, and that's the goal.
And not cost the town anything.
That's right. The goal is to break even.
Yeah, and I would even be more optimistic. I think we will generate a positivity, and that would allow for hopefully capital costs, reinvesting, as long as we keep it and it's reinvesting into that same program and it's not going anywhere. I don't think it'll infringe on our grants.
So when you're figuring those numbers, you're taking into consideration the matches for grants for new pump out boats, vessels, things like that that we need. You're including that into costs that the town would have to put out. All right.
If I may, Mr. Mayor and
Sure.
council, these two guys have worked harder than just about anybody in this town to be self-sufficient. They've rooted out almost everything themselves with very little help. They've done all the footwork. Austin is relentless in what he's doing out in the field and being with community relations. Chad, not only on the beach side, but also looking at the grant world, setting alongside Austin and getting that mooring field up and running. They really, really deserve a big pat on the back for everything they're doing for the town to get us back up and going.
Well, we certainly have received plenty of correspondence from both of you for what you're doing, and you've got a how do you say it, Vice Mayor, a Herculean challenge coming up to try to get that optimal grant in place before the end of March. So we won't try to hold you up too much longer, so you can get to work.
Thank you.
Thanks, gentlemen.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for the great work.
Now we need a presentation for the sea turtle conservation, an overview of an environmental staff. Take it away.
Yeah, so were any of y'all able to watch the Murph meeting yesterday?
Not yet, no.
Okay, so I went through this, so I'll go back through if y'all haven't seen it, then I'll go back through it. So staff, me, sea turtle lighting, it's controversial. It's, we get a lot of feedback, and what I just want to make sure it's your town, and I want to make sure I'm in sync with y'all, which is my purpose of coming up and talking and trying to get some direction from y'all and presenting in my head what my challenges are and making sure, that striking that balance between our development, recovery, and conservation efforts as a town. So staff reviews, we have town codes that, that staff uses, our lighting standards code and our sea turtle conservation code, two separate codes that both speak towards lighting. So our lighting standards code is more of a dark skies type code where it's looking to, curtail the degradation of nighttime visual environment, limit that light pollution and light trespass, conserve energy and night while maintaining nighttime safety, utilization, security, etc. So more, it's more people oriented. You don't want glare coming at you whenever you're driving. You don't want your windows lit up whenever you're trying to sleep. You don't, just all the different facets of more people-centric considerations. It applies to all new luminaires, which is a fancy way of saying fixtures, light fixtures, and regardless of whether a development order is required, and it's must comply with this code. Whereas our sea turtle conservation is more sea turtle centric, as you may have guessed, and it's looking at protecting our nesting and hatching sea turtles on the beaches and ensuring that nesting habitat is not degraded by our light pollution. And it is applicable to all properties within the town that may produce artificial light directly, indirectly, or cumulatively on any portion of the beach, regardless of whether those properties are beachfront properties or not. All buildings, all infrastructure, landscaping, etc. So when is a lighting review required? So prior to issuance of a development order or a building permit for all structures waterward of the CCCL, Coastal Construction Control Line. The CCCL, it's a state line. We reference it in our code, and it's more or less a sterile boulevard. It meanders a bit, but more or less a sterile boulevard. So all structures that are on the Gulf side of a sterile boulevard are subject to this lighting review, as well as all multifamily and commercial structures landward of the CCCL. So in effect, all multifamily and all commercial structures island-wide receive a lighting review whenever they're going in for permitting that includes light work. So what are we looking at whenever what's the reviewing? So we're looking at illuminance, which is a fancy way to say brightness. So photometric data, we only require that photometric data of commercial multifamily structures or developments or improvements. Looking at meeting minimum maximums in parking lots, et cetera, that's in the illumination table. And those things are things that are measured in lumens, watts, foot candles. We also look at lamp standards. So what is the bulb and LED type and color? The code calls for it to be in harmony with the adjacent community, consistent with the task and setting, and shouldn't create a mix of colors. We're also
What
looking
did you
at
say there? You just said it shouldn't create a mix of colors?
should not create a
Okay.
mix of colors. This is,
Okay,
and this
should.
is all, this is
Right.
not Chad says, this is just basically a
No, I
copy and
just- I
paste
thought
of the
you said
code.
Should, not should.
Should not, yeah, should not create a mix of colors. Uniformity.
Chad, just for folks who might be watching, and you just said that commercial properties on the other side of Estero, on the Gulf side of Estero, they have to meet the same standards that commercial properties on the Gulf side have to meet. Is there room for discernment?
We're getting there.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yes, sir. You're welcome. Or no worries, I should say. So we're also looking at luminaire standards. So, fully shielded, full cutoff, recessed bulbs with flat lenses are the only permitted fixtures for outdoor lighting. So that's what we're looking at. There are exceptions, but you're talking about 20-watt bulbs, 60-watt bulbs, motion detectors, floodlights that are properly configured, staying on property, et cetera. So, you're also looking at mounting standards. So that applies to light poles, talking about the height, 15 feet or 12 feet, where they can be out on the building. They shouldn't be on top of a building, on the wall, et cetera. And then another reference in this lighting standards is it also references the Sea Turtle Code. So, in order to comply with the lighting standards code, you must also comply with the Sea Turtle Code. So in the Sea Turtle Code, all artificial lighting affixed to the exterior of a new permanent structure, construction, or additions to a permanent structure shall be long wavelength, downward directed, full cutoff, fully shielded, mounted as close to the ground as possible, and they must achieve the required foot candles. So I don't look into, are you meeting the Florida Building Code, or are you meeting the Department of Health requirements for a pool to be adequate lighted if it's a public pool? But we're not restricting that minimum illuminance or brightness. Those are required by Florida Building Code and Department of Health. So they do need to be bright enough, but still meet the long, downward directed and fully shielded. So why do we need lighting reviews? So human health and safety, it's kind of like the Goldilocks, not too bright, not too dark. Use the illuminance guidelines for how many foot candles we need for health and safety. And then we also need it for sea turtle conservation so that those species can recover. And sea turtles are some of the best natural light detectors. So they see light, they head there. So what happens if we don't review lighting? I call it runaway lighting. It's just bulbs here, but bulbs appear there. Existing, you have people just start, all of a sudden we have all this new LED technology that, minimum electricity, and, you have a 100-watt equivalent, and these LEDs that use minimal electricity. So it's you can go brighter without a big expenditure in electricity.
But you can also go dimmer.
And you can also go dimmer, and you can also change colors. Yep. So this is just from this past after Hurricane Ian. The top left, you have, across Estero Boulevard, on the other side of Estero Boulevard, landward side of Estero Boulevard, lights shining onto the beach. On the top right, you have that, that cumulative effect of light, lights reflecting into the clouds, and it's visible from the beach. It caused a disorientation. On the bottom left, contractor installed an underwater light. Now it's reflecting off the building. Sea turtles ended up, 20, 30 some odd sea turtles ended up in the pool. Same type of scenario on a beachside pool where, lights installed, it's left on at night and causes an issue. So you also have existing lighting. You hear a lot of times, why do I need a lighting review? This is all, I'm just replacing the stuff that I had before. Well, it's the same fixture as I had before. It's just that it's a much brighter LED. Does that LED that you installed in there and that fixture that you've had since the 1950s, is it the same brightness, or is it 2, 3, 10 times brighter than what was intended for that fixture to be compliant? So we do request on these lighting submittals that the existing lighting, the code requests the existing lighting be included, unless it's not in the scope and it may not be reviewable. So what does the code say? Existing light fixtures must be brought into compliance with the lighting standards code by January 2010. So they all should be compliant now. And then any fixtures after the date of the adoption should be replaced with fixtures that comply with the standards in the code, comply with the illuminance. And then also in the sea turtle code, existing artificial lighting shall not be visible from the beach directly, indirectly, or cumulatively. So why are you telling all of this to us, Chad? So I'm looking for direction on policy. So I think direct and indirect is pretty straightforward. If a light's directly visible from the beach, we want it to be long wavelength, downward directed, and shielded from the beach. That is not necessarily just on the beach, especially now since the hurricane took out a lot of vegetation and a lot of structures. You have houses that are 1, 2, 3 plus lots deep that are now essentially beachfront. There's nothing impeding their view corridor to the beach, and they cause disorientations.
I didn't hear the word amber in there, Chad. For directly visible
So-
from the beach, should it be amber?
Yeah, so sorry, long wavelength, just to educate the public, long wavelength, narrow spectrum, which means it is a true color of amber, orange, or red. So long wavelength, whereas a shorter wavelength is more towards the blue. So Roy G. Biv, long wavelength is on the Roy side, short wavelength is on the Biv side.
Okay.
Well, are you done, Chad, or are you?
Nope, we're gonna go.
Okay.
So directly visible is pretty straightforward. Indirectly, also pretty straightforward. So like on the back side of condos, when you have a wall, a condo wall of lights, if that's all white, bright lights, it reflects off of buildings on the other side and then visible from the beach, causing a disorientation. So the code requires those to also be long wavelength, but not necessarily shielded because the building itself is shielding it. So long wavelength can provide the same illuminance, the same brightness, but sea turtles are not as sensitive to it. So you can still have it bright, but the sea turtles are not as sensitive to that reflected light because it's long wavelength and just the way that they see.
Chad, as you're going over this, and this is very helpful, can you just give us a thumbnail sketch of, you're looking for direction, but it sounds like a lot of this is required by the state, so we don't have any flexibility. Can you just give us a thumbnail
I
sketch?
disagree with that.
So the state,
No, I'm just asking.
the state completely punts this to the localities. This is one of the few things where the state says we do not want to preempt localities, and they depend on the locality to do this. Having said that, we are required, and we'll start getting in hot water if we don't do it, if that makes sense.
It doesn't make sense. Say that again. So the state doesn't require, but they're going to enforce it if we don't do it.
Well, you have the Endangered Species Act.
This gets back to the Estero Boulevard lighting issue where FWC said you have to have amber lights, even though it's not in statute, you have to have them based on policy. Is that just so people
It's based on
understand that?
take. You can, so if you start installing a bunch of white lights and it looks like Christmas, and you have disorientations that are being reported, and you get, red flags start going up and we get some unwanted attention.
I got you. But just again, so the average person can understand, it's the state expects it, but they don't require it. Is that, how do you characterize it?
I would defer to legal, and that we can come back with answers to that
I'm
question,
not trying to
but
be difficult. I'm just trying to understand, because you're looking for direction. I'm trying to understand how much direction we can give.
so this is where the questions are coming.
Yep. Right.
So this is the direction I'm looking for.
Oh, no, I know. But from our attorney, how much of this is state and how much?
Sounds like it's federal.
Well, you got state, federal.
Well, you have state laws for take, you have federal laws for take,
Right.
and then
You
the
have
state.
local code.
Yeah, my point is that the state doesn't have a statute for lighting ordinance per se. It mandates the localities to adopt it. And then they have that state model ordinance where they,
I asked that, Chad, only because we had this long.
Yeah. Well, I think
conversation.
to make it easier for most people to understand, now that we've had to go through the FEMA process,
Mhm.
FEMA always tells you, we don't make the rules. They are the state rules. You have to enforce them. However, if you don't follow the rules that we don't implement, we're going to remove you from the National Flood Insurance Program. It's the same as this. We suggest you do this, and if you don't do it, there are going to be consequences, but we're not telling you have to do it. And that's a very broad,
much
simplistic thing,
better said than I could have. Yes, sir.
but it's essentially along those same lines.
So where I'm looking for direction is, cumulatively visible. What are we talking about? We're talking about lights that in all start to create a brightness. It's not necessarily directly or indirectly visible from the beach, but as they all team up, they're reflecting off of clouds, et cetera. So cumulatively visible means, light from numerous artificial light sources from a property that are as a group are directly, indirectly visible to observers standing anywhere on the beach. So this is the classic, you're standing on the beach and you see, the city, the white clouds, the white sky, the sky glow happening. So
Ambient light.
ambient light, sure. So how do we assess this? It's not visible every night. If you have a clear sky and there's no clouds reflecting it, maybe you don't see it. But during the summertime, when it's sea turtle season, all of a sudden, you're doing this review in winter, and then you're looking at it during summer when it's cloudy, and all of a sudden you see it looks, it's bright out there and something that the sea turtles would be attracted to. So my question and where I'm looking for direction is, where does that indirect visible light end, and where does the cumulative light begin? So where do we stop requiring long wavelength lights from being required and just abide by the lighting standards code, dark skies code? So you can have full spectrum light as long as you abide by downward directed full cutoff illuminance brightness values.
So the dark skies piece of the ordinance doesn't give enough protection to address some of the concerns you're talking about.
It just
depending
depends
on
on
the
how close those white lights are to the beach and where is that line in the sand, so to speak.
Chad, for me, you're looking for directions. To me, you have to look at this as a totality thing. And the concerns that you're hearing about are because we have gone too far down one path. If you go back to your very first screen, one of the things in there is public safety.
Mhm.
We've gone so far away from what is public safety outside of turtle season that
Mhm.
we've gotten so focused on, you have to do it this way. There's no other way around it. And I think we're doing our constituents and our staff a disservice by not allowing flexibility with things. We're not taking advantage of technology that's out there that can control a lot of this. You can go buy a bulb right now from Home Depot that you can make one of any 77,000 colors from your phone. But we're not allowing people to take advantage of that technology because of the way the code is written. Now, when we're outside of turtle season, everybody on this island understands what they have to do when it comes to turtle season. But what we're doing is we're pigeonholing them into a specific standard for a year round. The time when we need the most light and when it's the darkest and we have the most people, we can't take advantage of that because we're requiring them to put in a very specific one kind, one service only. To me, that I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's right. There's businesses that want to have RGB lights where they could change it whatever color. They'll keep it amber during turtle season, even though it doesn't face the beach. But we're not allowing them to do that, or we're putting them through the ringer to try to get that through the permit approval process because we don't understand it, quite frankly. We don't understand that you can make that whatever color you want. And if during season when we have 60,000 people here, we're not allowing them to make their property safer or make Estero Boulevard safer or make the side streets safer because we're making decisions off of 6 months, not an entire year. And if the technology is there for people to be able to adjust and fall within code compliance when they're required to do it, why shouldn't we allow them to do that? We have a mechanism in place. If those that choose not to follow the code, then they have violations and we have to go through, you know more than anybody. It's a painstaking process. You don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but they know that ahead of time. I just think it's shameful that we're not looking at, do me a favor, go back to that very first screen that you had and look at the 4 bullet points you had up there. It's not just about one thing. There's 4 things up there that you had. Maintain nighttime safety, utility, security, and productivity. Outside of turtle season, that's our busy season. That's when it's the darkest, the longest on our island, and we have the most people here. We're completely not doing anything for that bottom bullet point.
I fully understand what you're saying, and that is the flexibility or the direction that I'm looking for. So if you read the Sea Turtle Code where it says it applies to all properties,
Mhm.
and I must review all commercial and multifamily properties, I'm looking for some interpretation or some guidance where does that mean I need amber lighting at all commercial and multifamily properties?
If you're asking my opinion, my personal opinion, no. I think there's so much technology that allows you to make one of whatever color you want.
Yep.
You can make it amber. You can actually make it better than an amber fixture
Yeah.
just by adjusting it through your phone or through an app or through technology. And to just have an amber light year round, just simply because it's the easiest path, doesn't, to me, make sense. It doesn't do our constituents, our business owners, or our visitors any justice when they're walking down a dark road because it has to be one color outside of turtle season. So to allow the flexibility, to me, just makes the most sense. It's more cost effective. It provides more vibrant colors. It does more things that don't affect. I mean, you can have different colors that aren't just amber that can help with dark skies. They don't have to be, everybody just assumes LED is bright white. And I know we've gone down this road too many times and I get worked up over it because I understand it.
Yep.
But I don't think, no offense to you, I don't think you even understand a lot of the different technology that comes to lights and what you can do and what you can't do. And I really cringe when I hear from business owners and homeowners that are nowhere near the beach and are being told that their house can't be approved because they want to have color changing lights put in. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Yep, I understand. So that's exactly where I'm going with this. So the Sea Turtle Code does require if it's, if you're visible from the beach directly,
Absolutely.
if you're indirectly visible, on the backside where you're lighting up buildings that are visible from the beach,
Mhm.
I think we're all in sync on that. It's just, I have somebody from the Bay side that's saying, "What are you talking about?" And to me, if you're following dark skies, you should not be making a cumulatively visible light. And I just want some direction from you to feel more comfortable when I'm doing these light reviews to be able to say that in the interpretation of the code, if that makes sense.
No, I understand. I think you know where I stand, so I won't keep
Right.
talking. I'll let my colleagues put in their 2 cents, but I agree. You need direction because right now you're following what has always been done in the past and not looking at potential. I mean, I know I said I wasn't going to talk, but yet I here kept talking. It's been a painstaking process to get to the point where we are with the lighting on Estero Boulevard. I think we finally reached something that everybody can live with. It covers the safety. It's doing everything that we needed to do from a 1-foot candle standpoint and all of that. And everybody's on board with it and everything's fine. But that's Estero Boulevard, that a house that's on the back bay, to require that they have to have amber year round simply because it's the easiest path, to me, it doesn't make sense.
Right. So, in making this determination, instead of being subjective about it, because the tough thing with being subjective is consistency and wanting to stay consistent. So what kind of policy can I have as a staff and say, listen, here's the line in the sand, or here's what makes sense. So, so where do we require long length light? Do we require it everywhere? I'm hearing no. So that's one option. Just make it easy. I mean, my goal is to not have sea turtle enforcement. It is, I would like to get rid of sea turtle enforcement. The only way I can do that is to make sure the correct lighting is installed. And by correct, I don't necessarily mean long wavelength. I mean, it could be as long as it's dark sky compliant, it should not be cumulatively visible from the beach. So where is that, where does that cumulatively visible?
Well, and I don't know, Chad, that you're going to be able to find a specific line, because as we build back, that line could change as buildings get, I mean, but if I'm a homeowner and I can control things from my phone, like right now, I can't
Well,
control whether or not
Yeah.
someone closes their blinds, which causes enforcement problems
Sure.
for you. But I can control what color that light is. So whether they leave the blind open or not, I can handle that as a homeowner from anywhere in the country.
So I don't review single family homes landward of the triple CL. So we're mostly just talking about commercial and multifamily. I don't, the only single family homes that I review are the ones that are on the beach side, that are waterward of Estero Boulevard. So I'm more talking about commercial businesses.
But you were showing pictures of things on the other side of Estero Boulevard as examples.
Correct, but those are directly visible, just to make that clear that, hey, that is, just because you're on the other side of Estero Boulevard doesn't mean you're not directly visible. Right?
Well, I get that, but you said you only really focus on the beach side. So
The
do you
code
give
on-
tickets to people on the other side of Estero Boulevard?
If it's causing a violation, sure.
So would you give a ticket to someone that's 3 or 4 houses down in today's scenario because it's visible?
So
from the beach?
we had a condo that was on the landward side of Estero Boulevard that had 20, 30 baby sea turtles in their pool.
Right. Well, trust me, this is not anything against
Yeah.
protecting the turtles. This is about protecting property rights
Right.
and people that come down here outside of turtle season.
Yep.
When it's the darkest and we have the most people. That's what my argument is to make a blanket lighting plan for the entire island. Just because it's easy doesn't necessarily mean it's the best.
Mhm.
Everybody that lives here or buys here understands what their requirements are, and if they don't follow them, what happens if they don't when it comes to sea turtle season, whether they're shielded, not shielded. I'm not comfortable with trying to say, here's the line in the sand. Anything from this side is okay. Everything from this side has to be this. It just doesn't add up.
Right. So I think what I'm asking, this is more towards not necessarily what's directly visible, not what's necessarily indirectly visible, but if it's a building 2, 3, all the way on the bay side, commercial or multifamily, when do I say, how, what I would like to hear is if it's, if they're abiding by, my staff recommendation would be if it's not, if it's not directly or indirectly visible from the beach, meaning it doesn't have the possibility of reflecting light off the beach and doesn't have the possibility of being directly visible from the beach, and it's only a cumulative lighting concern, how do I assess that? And is it, the will of the council to say, dark skies, lighting standards, code is sufficient to mitigate that cumulative light impact? And I believe that it is. I mean, looking at there was the recent in Bay Beach, there was I did a lighting review, and they have, the modern technology, if the luminance is proper, photometrics are proper, they have the full cutoff lights, it's not a worry. That particular condo in Bay Beach, it's not a worry from from the beach. It's just when you have, all the floodlights and everything else that's left on, that's not necessarily in compliance with the lighting standards.
Mhm.
So I think we're kind of saying the same thing. I'm just trying to get, trying to get my question addressed, if that makes sense. So I'm just looking, so we have 3 options on, policy of how do I make this assessment? So we have, long wavelength everywhere. That's not what I'm suggesting. Do I just use the 1991 triple CL as a delineation? Or we have this FWC guidance where they have basically identified where you have this red layer where it's wildlife lighting should be installed, and then the gray layer of where it should not be installed. So this is created by the FWC Imperiled Species Management section. It's just for planning purposes and as a minimum area that's recommended. And, if you look at, what they're saying is that, in these areas, that's where we should have wildlife lighting. And in the gray areas is where it's just dark skies also known as our lighting standards code, is the only thing that should be required as cumulative lighting. Or sorry, the only thing that would be required to mitigate cumulative lighting. Sorry, I'm starting to lose my voice.
And again, we keep there, and I won't say the name of the business, but there was one business on the island that their sign faces opposite of the beach. But the argument they got from staff was, well, what if they build something across the street and there's a reflection back onto the beach? Well, what if they don't? What if nothing gets built there? What if it turns into a parking lot? So I can't design something that can fall within turtle-friendly compliance when I'm required to do it because someone could potentially build a building across the street. That's the part that I'm talking about. Trying to draw a line in the stand that says, and we'll just use amber because everybody talks about amber. If I'm in this red zone here, I have to have amber light. Why? Why can't I have a blue light out of season or a red light out of season? But during turtle season, if I'm in this area, I have to have amber light.
My experience is that if the lighting is not installed such that it's foolproof when sea turtle season starts, it goes into violation once it does start. If there's options to change color, to leave a bulb in, to to not be in compliance, the probability is just it ends up falling out of compliance. And if that's the town's will to spend that staff time on reminding everyone to change their bulbs, I'm happy to do that. But again, my goal with this was to try to.
But aren't you doing that now? And I'm not trying to beat you up, Chad, because I know you're just trying to do what's in the best interest.
No, it's a good, healthy conversation. I appreciate it.
When you're looking at a commercial structure, a condo building on the beach, they can be in 100% compliance where everything is visible, but then they rent out their condo and the shades are left open and they have normal LED light in there, no, whatever color it is, white, blue, green, purple, and now they are out of compliance. So you're still having to patrol that because we aren't controlling exactly what everybody puts in their lamp. So you know what I mean? So you're still doing it. If there was a magic button that we could all push that says we know that there's going to be no violations come turtle season, I'm sure we would all take that option. But there's no magic bullet here. There's no magic pill that's going to solve this. And to me, I keep saying it, seems like we're erring on the side of it's just easier for me not to have to do the work if someone doesn't fall into compliance, as opposed to educating people. We have new business owners coming in now. We have new homeowners coming in. We have condos changing hands. People are going to have to be educated. Right. And those are the ones that are probably asking, well, why do I have to, if it's the middle of February, if it's February 15th, why do I have to have an amber light in my house or on my business when my customers can't see on the sidewalk because it's not bright enough, or I can't turn it up, or it's causing that? We have to use some common sense here to allow people and trust that people are going to do the right thing. Not everybody's going to do everything. We are going to have bad actors to use, those are the ones that the code is there for, to get them to come back into compliance. But punishing the entire island, and it's probably not the best word, but punishing the entire island to have to adhere to something because it's easier and we don't understand it, I just can't get my head behind it.
Right. So again, the crux of my why I'm presenting today is, would you allow me as staff, do I have to enforce the sea turtle amber long wavelength requirement in that gray area? Or, can I have that flexibility, so to speak, to only do the lighting standards code when it's in that gray area where FWC is saying that's what the suggestion of FWC is. So, but what I'm hearing is even further, I'm asking for the flexibility, to do white lighting or to do dark sky lighting on commercial, allow that, dark sky lighting in the gray area, and not require long wavelength lighting on the bay side, I guess is where I'm getting to. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, but I don't think you're understanding what I'm saying.
I do.
A single luminary can have both long and short wave based on adjustments.
Mm-hmm.
So to pigeonhole something to say it has to be this, when there's technology that allows you to do both.
Mhm.
Why wouldn't we allow that? Why would we have to say, because you're in the red area, my neighbor can have this light, but I have to have this light because I'm on the other side of this imaginary line?
Mhm. Well,
I think you have
there's definitely enforcement discretion, and then the sea turtle code only applies during sea turtle season. So we don't. There's plenty of white lights that are waterward of the triple CL right now that is not my
Right, but
concern.
as people are building back their businesses and they're building back their homes, they have to know, or they have to get the approval from staff, and staff's going to look at it as this light may or may not be able to fall into compliance with the time of the year when you have to be within compliance. But I think it's on then the homeowner to show you, or if the homeowner can say, here's a photometric study, here's all the documentation that shows you that I can do this for the 6 months that I'm required to do it. We're not allowing them to put the light in. We're saying no, because I don't think, and maybe you do, and I just don't understand, or maybe you don't have
No,
the staff
if it's
that understands photometric studies and how to read them and what they can and can't. I mean, there's a lot of hours that go into researching a luminary. And I'm not saying that's your job to do it, but I think it would be on the applicant to show you this is where it meets the requirements and highlight them for you so that you can very easily see. Anyone that's ever ordered a fixture, there's many different drivers, there's many different things that you can choose, there's many different wattages, there's all kinds of different things. And usually when you're building a new house, it's in that packet of, here's what we're selecting and it's highlighted. This is the specific fixture that we're going to use for here. Here's all the data for it. And it's highlighted where it meets all the code. And it's very simple, actually. It's already done for you at their expense, not your expense. And I'm in favor of leaving you the leeway to look at that. And say, yes, it does meet the requirements that we're required to follow for FWC and for sea turtle season.
This because I know the lighting issues around here, but I think we really need to look at this whole scenario again and look at the new technology and understand the new technology before we put these total restrictions on people and everybody's in an uproar again. Sorry.
No,
My
you
opinion.
don't have to apologize to me. It's your town.
You look like you're in deep thought there, Councilor King. You got something to say?
I'm with you, Mayor and Councilor Woodson. I've been involved in this issue since I moved to the beach and had a notice placed on the condo where I was a board member, and that was my first meeting with Chad. So it's been a long going thing.
Nice to meet you.
And I wholeheartedly understand where you're coming from, Mayor. We've been so punitive about what could possibly happen versus just allowing people to be adults and be responsible, and then punishing those so-called bad actors that don't follow the standards. And yes, again, it's more of it needs to be educational because of where we are now and the new people coming in and the new businesses. So I don't know. I think you know what you need to do. It's very subjective from you anyway. You don't have the equipment to go out there and count luminaries or watts or anything like that. So you know, it's your eyesight that you're using. So I guess I'm still not sure what you're wanting from us.
So in terms, well, the crux of the issue is that you have the Sea Turtle Conservation Code that applies to all commercial and multifamily
I get that.
properties, whether they're on the beach or off the beach. So I'm hearing a lot of pushback from your constituents with regards to you're requiring amber lights off the beach. And I would like that flexibility to say, no, you just need to do dark sky lighting.
And I'm okay with that. I mean, we just put in new lights on our parking lot across Estero Boulevard, but went full-time amber because, again, that's the easiest thing to do.
But it's not necessarily the best or the
Correct.
safest
Yes.
or what's needed for 6 months out of the year.
Well, and well, speaking of your example, did you go out and get a photometric study to make sure that your parking lot across the street is meeting the 1 foot candle requirement for safety?
That I could not talk to.
Or did you just put lights in where they were before that are less safe for those that are trying to go to their cars?
You know, not being on the condo board now, and not having had the chance to talk to those people, I'm assuming that's what we did. We replaced what was there with what is considered turtle-friendly lighting for
And I guess,
year-round in a parking lot area.
and that's the crux of my issue is people are taking the path of least resistance just so that they don't have to worry about going through what we're talking about right now, which is very painstaking for people that don't understand a lot of it. But by doing that, they're putting people's personal lives at risk.
Absolutely. I get nervous anytime that there is a shift in their minimum lighting requirements for a parking lot. And then you're changing your bulb here and there instead of having the proper lights. And I don't look at it. I rely on the lighting engineer to put his stamp on it. So, you know, I get nervous with, you're changing your bulb in your parking lot. I don't want to be liable for that. So that's why I'm encouraging everyone to get the proper photometric to make sure you are illuminating your parking lot properly. And again, luminance is different from color.
No, 100% it is. The foot candle is a foot candle, no matter what color it is. And that's the public safety standard is 1 foot candle. And the decisions we've made in the past or the enforcements that we've made people do in the past inadvertently have gone away from that. They have looked away from the public safety aspect of it. And I'm just trying to get that pendulum back a little bit to the middle where it meets the requirements for both sides. We were able to achieve it for Estero Boulevard, so it can be done. I just want to make sure we're not moving too far away from public safety, which I think we've already done, and trying to bring it back a little bit to common sense where we need to protect the people as much as we need to protect the environment. And I think we're leaning too far one way, in my opinion, and we need to bring it back. I know.
Yeah, it's subjective. Yep. It's okay.
Yeah, it is, to use your words, it's subjective. We sat out there with Dr. Trindell and we almost didn't get the lighting approval for Estero Boulevard because there could have been a building built across the street from the testing fixture that we were testing that could have reflected onto without having a shield exactly the right direction. If they built a building that was 3 stories high, not 2 stories high, it could reflect off. And at the very end of the conversation, after hours and hours and hours of sitting out there with 25, 30 people from all different jurisdictions, the very last thing was, it's all subjective anyway.
I've heard a report of that conversation. Yes, sir.
So if it's subjective, let's be subjective. Let's rely on people to do what's in the best interest, that know what they're
restrictive turtle glass that is not only costly but limits your visibility to the beach. Now I'm in a weird situation now. I literally lived on the beach prior to the storm. Now I live on the bay. So I've experienced both perspectives in the last 6 months. get a plan for the red area, but at least give you some guidance today that you need to not die prematurely, that gray area is probably going to allow that grace, but the red area, we'll take some time and think about what the mayor suggested and see if there's a way to implement that in a way that we can allow good actors to really use the flexibility of technology and also be sensitive to the turtles and public safety.
Because I think I think if you do that, I think what you'll find out are those that want to be good actors are going to do the work for you. They're going to bring you the materials that say, this is how we can be in compliance. This is how we plan on doing it. And it's not going to require you to have to go do a lot of legwork. I've talked to several people that are willing to do that, have their lighting engineer, whoever's doing the lighting for them, lay out exactly what it is, give you all the detail that you need. So all you have to do is look at it. It meets what I'm required to meet. Go forward.
I remember when I lived on the Gulf side, we spent, I don't know, $6,000 or $7,000 on these special shades that raise and lower. You could put a timer on it, and you could utilize those during turtle season. But then when the shades go up, or when it's not turtle season, you have this beautiful view of the Gulf that's not impeded by some turtle glass that's extremely dark for many folks. So again, we tried to do the right thing. And in fact, I remember going outside my building and policing the building, self-policing, because I know the grief that you had. And I'd find, just try to help people along. Some folks are tourists, some people, and there may be instances like Pig Shell. They have a lot of people coming for just a couple weeks at a time. They decided to tint their whole building. They thought that was in their best economic interest and to help them be compliant. And they did that, and it's been successful. Some folks don't think that tint, some people think the tint affects their warranty, et cetera, and they don't like the look of it. And that's fine. As long as you get the shades closed, you're fine. And so I think giving some flexibility to what the mayor's talking about in a responsible way that respects both the public safety and the environmental issues, I think it's worth looking at. But to help you today, I think that gray area for multi-family and commercial units, and when I say gray, I mean literally the color gray on the map. I don't mean gray. We've had a lot
Let
of
the
gray.
gray be gray.
Yeah, I think that seems like a reasonable thing for you, Chad, because you're putting it in an impossible situation.
Okay, thank you.
Is that enough direction?
Yes, sir.
At least start in the right direction? Or
Yes, sir. I appreciate
start
the
in a
discussion.
direction?
Yep.
All right. Thanks, Chad.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Chad.
Keep up the good work. Let them know that they should have been here for that joint meeting, or not the joint meeting, the town hall meeting we had with the condos. They have assured us that they're going to come back and do a meeting to answer questions and give updates. The Estero Boulevard, they told us their goal is to start in April and be done the first quarter of 25. So, and they would start at the south end. So they're just, it's not just Estero Boulevard. It's the side streets as well, as we all know, but there's also money that's coming from the county for crosswalks and things that there's two different plans that are being pushed together to make sure that they're working in concert with each other. But they have assured us that they are going to come back and have a meeting to answer questions and for us as well as a constituent.
I think the proposed plan sounds great. It'd just be great for them to formally present it in a way that would be helpful. So it sounds like that's going to happen. So that's fine from my perspective.
If I may, late yesterday afternoon, we received a contact from Christopher Powell, who's spearheading that project for FPNL. And we have an on-site meeting at the South Tower on the 26th of February.
Perfect.
Just maybe whenever the appropriate time, he could come in and just
Yes.
present so the public could kind of hear too,
Yes.
kind of their overview, and also the side streets and the crosswalk and how it all intersects with each other. Because I know it's
We will
all,
definitely get that
yeah,
going.
that'd be
Yes.
great. Yep.
Amy, can you add that to the agenda management to schedule that meeting for FPL? And there is, maybe we can get, I know that Chris provided us with a lighting plan of what fixtures are going to go where, so that's already available. Can we get that out through our social media so people can see what side streets are getting what light, where the poles are going to go and all that kind of thing? It's, if you're not a lighting nerd like me, you'll probably find it very boring, but it'll at least show you where the lights are going to be on what side of the road, what shielding is going to be used, where it's going to be used, how it's going to be used. It's pretty in tune with the discussions we've had for the last 7 years.
So can I just talk about the strategic planning and if and when and where are we with doing our strategic planning as a council?
Well, the resignation of Mr. Beach kind of threw a wrench into it a little bit because it is
that's-
better to
hopefully
have.
that's going to be resolved today, but we'll
But-
see.
Right, but that's better. We can get that scheduled as soon as you want to do it, and we have it down here. It's on the list for a
But it
February.
says
when we talk to ULI with the downtown, with the streets, the parks, everything that we discussed in those 3 meetings that we had with the presentations. It's kind of just a pulling together of all that, and it's completely funded for us, and we're moving forward with it.
And we've hired a firm to do that?
We have not. It's been hired for us
Oh,
by FEMA.
So who is this? What is
It's
the
the
name?
R2P2 program that started way back.
R2P2?
Yes.
Yeah, so I guess the easiest way, there was a email that went out a while back that the DEP was going to look at Sanibel, Fort Myers, and Fort Myers Beach. And, at the time, we didn't know, as we were going through having the discussions about urban planning and ULI and the people that came out. Well, in the background, DEP was doing the same thing, unbeknownst to us. Well, an email went out to the jurisdictions, and it kind of got blended in with an email that we've gotten 1,000 physically go to some of the areas like Times Square and
Okay.
some and look at the areas.
A World War II veteran took on an urgent mission more than a decade ago, and it just paid off. Here's CBS's Steve Hart.
call this meeting to order. Today is Thursday, February 15th. It is 11:45 a.m. All council members are present. Town manager, town attorney, town clerk. We are at the Bay Oaks Recreation Center. If you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next, we have public comment. Is there anyone here that, yes, sir, come on up.
Jim Bowen, 21067 St. Peters. The town has many important pending decisions. Filling the town council vacancy seems to have become a distraction. The focus needs to be rebuilding our island. To move forward, the town needs a unified council. For that reason, I'm withdrawing my name for consideration. Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you, Jim. Anyone else? Seeing none, anyone? All right, seeing none, we'll close public comment. Administrative agenda, town council vacancy. I think we kind of,
I can tee it up for you.
go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So the one agenda item before you today is the requested motion would be the appointment of an individual to fill the vacant seat that currently exists on the town council. As you are aware, Bill Veach, he resigned from the town council back in December. Thereafter, on January the 8th, the town council acknowledged the vacancy and solicited applications from qualified individuals to serve. There were five applications received. We currently have one that is coming off, right? A copy of that, there was a copy of all the applications in your packet. So the authority that we need to rely upon in order to fill this vacancy is found in Chapter 4, Section 4.08 of the Town Charter. And what that provides is that a vacancy on the council, except for the position of the mayor, will be filled by appointment by a majority vote of the council members remaining, and said appointment would be effective until a successor is chosen at the next regular election. So at your last meeting, there were several attempts to obtain that majority vote, which were unsuccessful. And for that reason, today's meeting was called as a special meeting in order to see if we're able to fill that appointment. In the interim, Councilmember John King, sorry, it was a senior moment. Councilmember King asked a very good question regarding whether or not there would be any impact on the town's budgetary process. And I was able to do some research on that, and I did work with our finance director, and there could be an impact on your budgetary process. And that impact would be in the event that there was a determination to exceed the rollback rate greater than 110%. That would require require a unanimous vote of the town council seats, and we have 5 seats. So if you have one that is vacant, you would not have that option to exceed that rollback amount. What will be the rollback rate for the coming budgetary cycle? We do not know that information yet until June. The other information that I was able to share with you is that currently in the Florida legislature, there is some pending litigation. There is a bill that's been filed in the Senate as well as in the House. This talks about increasing the previous millage rate, requiring a vote of at least 2/3 of the membership. So 2/3 of your membership would basically be 4 people, which you could, depending on how that legislation gets finalized, they could change it to be a unanimous position, at which point you would not have the 5. Or they could do nothing. So that's still kind of an unknown. So you, as far as the budgetary process, you have 2 unknowns to be aware of. One is you don't know what the property appraiser is going to give you as a value, and you don't know if there's going to be a legislative change. With that background, I would then defer to our finance director if he wants to. He's passed out a example of the millage rate calculations based on the 2023 millage rate forms, which you should have in front of you. And it's a very clear, I think, example of how the number of votes coincide with whatever change you make to the rollback. And so you'll see the number of votes required on the left-hand side with the percentage of the rollback on the very right-hand side. So I'll defer to Joe. I need that energy drink.
Hey, Joe.
Good morning. Joe Onzik, Director of Finance. I put together this example. What attached to it are the forms that kind of come along and what dictate these calculations. So at first I was just going to pass those out, but they're so confusing to look at. I thought it would be easier to just present a simple example for you. So just to illustrate and put this into perspective. So the top section is the calculation of the rollback rate. And so how that's determined is the prior year, the prior year property tax revenue is used. So that's our starting point. And then it's divided by the newly appraised value of property, but that's before additions and deletions. And then you divide that by 1,000 and you get the rollback rate. So using the same information that was used last year, the rollback rate was calculated at 0.8290. The millage rate that we had in effect the previous year was 0.99. And there was a desire to maintain that millage rate at 0.99. And so that's where this comparison then comes into effect, where we're now comparing that desired or proposed millage rate of 0.99 and just to keep it the same. It's now getting compared based on these official documents that are turned into the tax appraiser. It's being compared to that rollback rate of 0.8290%. Or I'm sorry, not percent, just 0.8290. According to the requirements for the number of votes that are required to increase it above that rollback rate, a majority vote is required to increase it just enough to capture the per capita Florida personal income, the change in personal income. And based on last year, that would have allowed us to raise it from 0.829 to 0.8525. That increase would have required a majority vote, which at that point would be three members. That would have increased our property tax revenue by $60,000. We were then also if we were to have a 2/3 vote maximum, the maximum millage rate required by a 2/3 vote of 4 members would be 0.9378. That would yield an overall increase of $220,194 over and above that $60,000. That's the limit. That's that 110% limit that we're reaching there that would be allowed by 4 members. But to get all the way up to that 0.99%, we would require a unanimous vote, which would mean 5 votes. And that is what would bring us up an additional $134,000. So that is what we would be, I guess, at risk
if you wanted to rank each of the remaining 4 applicants and then have a composite vote as to which of the 4 got the lowest number, with one being the preferred candidate or individual. Or there could simply just be a motion made, and if there's a majority in support of the motion, if it's seconded and then a majority, then that would satisfy your charter requirement.
Nancy, if this is a situation where the position wouldn't remain filled, would that be something the governor could weigh in on and fill that position, or is that off the table?
It's really not an option that you have available to you, and the reason for it, or the authority for that, is your charter. Your charter says that the governor could appoint an interim council, and that would be if there were multiple vacancies on council such that there was not a majority of members present.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Joe. I think if everyone else is comfortable with this, to try to get it potentially done 1, not 3 tries. If everyone is comfortable with just explaining who their selection is, why they're selecting them, and then we can get a motion. Is everybody okay with that, or would you rather do a ballot? And I have no problem with discussing, but I'll leave it to the will of the council. You look like you're leaning in, Karen.
Just fine. I mean, I have no problem discussing it. I think maybe to take a vote first and see where we're at, because that could be the
certain.
deciding factor. And then if it's not, then we go into discussion mode.
I'm okay with either way. What say you, Vice Mayor Adderholt?
Well, I want to comment because I heard some concern that we didn't have discussion last time. And let me tell you why I was comfortable with that. We had and have 5 outstanding candidates, all of whom could step in tomorrow and serve this town honorably. And I'm so proud and thankful for the men and women who stepped up, Barbara, Jim, Ed, Sal, and Scott, because it's a heavy lift. And I think they're all eminently qualified. And one of the concerns I had about having a debate about it, when you talk about someone, you're in essence being critical of the other 4, or you're making inferences that could be misconstrued. I think all 5 of these people are spectacular. I think what Jim just said today is demonstrative of his class and grace. And I think all these candidates exhibit that. And so that's why I was comfortable not having a debate, because I don't want to diminish any of these candidates, because I think they're all outstanding. But that being said, I don't like, for that reason, I don't like the ranking concept, because I think all 5 of them are outstanding. I have no problem having a conversation about it and utilizing the procedure that you've suggested, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Councilor King.
I guess I was pretty adamant of where I was in my position, but obviously things have changed and we need to move forward and we have to do something, and I'm ready and willing to do that now.
So would you like to just take the vote, or would you like to?
I'm okay with taking a vote.
Okay.
And if you want to discuss it later, I'm happy to do that as well.
Yeah, I mean, you okay, Vice Mayor? We'll take the vote then?
That's fine.
I mean, we're split again, 2 and 2.
No,
so-
that's fine. That's
Okay.
fine.
By ballot.
By ballot, yeah, not the ranking, just the select, select your choice. And then if everyone's okay, if you want to say something after the vote, if a vote goes through, then we could say a few words, but if you don't want to, you don't have to. Okay.
Okay, the first one is for Scott Safford. Scott Safford. Scott Safford.
Make your decision.
And Scott Safford.
There you have it.
So For purposes of the record, if there could be a motion made to be seconded and then voted officially.
Okay. Would someone like to make a motion to accept the nomination?
I move that we accept the results of the voting.
I'll second.
Got a motion by Counselor King, seconded by Counselor Woodson. Discussion. Vice Mayor Harold?
Well, I kind of just gave my discussion.
You did.
But having said that, I will explain my vote. Scott has served on the LPA for 8 years, I believe. I served with him for 2 of those years, so work with him closely. Everyone has suffered to varying degrees on this island post-Ian. Scott is in a relatively unique situation in that both his home and his business was impacted. And I think that gives him a unique perspective. Everybody on this list has suffered. But I think, again, that double hit that he took, I think it gives him a broad perspective. I've heard concerns about potential being a small business person on Fort Myers Beach, that that's a potential conflict of interest. I would say that there are processes and procedures that work very well here for people to recuse themselves when they have a conflict. I would argue having that business background, that local business background on the island is an asset, not a detriment. And that's why I'm thrilled with all 5 of these candidates, but that's why in a very difficult decision, I selected Scott Safford.
Yeah, I don't know if I could have said it any better than what you said before the vote. I've felt it was important to have an LPA member that filled that seat for the remainder, simply for the fact that understanding the codes and understanding some of the challenges that we were facing before the storm and what we're facing now, just having that knowledge in the background was important. To your point, I think we were fortunate that we had 5 very good candidates that stepped up to the challenge, because it is a challenge. It is a big part of your life if you decide to do it. So to get 5 qualified people to do it, I thought was respectful. I thought it was a good showing of our community and how people want to be involved. I commend you, Jim, for what you did. You had my vote at the last one. You would have had my vote at this one had you stayed in. I've had conversations with the other members as to why I did that. I think Jim offered a lot of valuable insight as far as legal and financial background with municipalities. So therefore, that's why I felt you were the best choice. However, I talked with Scott yesterday about it. Being on the LPA is very important. Barbara having the background that she has on this island for so many years, as well as Ed, he's got a new vision, and all the other members had their own reasons. But for that reason is why I went with an LPA member. Jim gracefully backed out today, so Scott got my vote for that reason. Anyone else? Any further discussion? No?
I mean, I don't know that it requires any further discussion. I mean, Scott had my vote the first time around and the second time around. And one of my big things that I was concerned about was the possibility of running this fall. I don't think we had a majority of people that were willing to run this fall, or at least they're not willing yet, but maybe will change their mind. But certainly being on the LPA, as I was as well for 2 years before I came into this seat, it's critical. I mean, it is absolutely critical to know process, to know procedure, to know the codes, to know what's happening, and to have that skill level that you hit the ground running, or as running as you can possibly be, because it's still a learning curve being up here, even if you have that experience, but that puts you ahead of the game. So I'm happy with how we came to this conclusion, and welcome Scott on board.
All right, we have a motion and a second.
I would just like to weigh in too, if
Yes,
I
sir.
could.
Go ahead.
I supported Ed, and I had my reasons for that. I liked all the candidates, honestly. I'm not trying to be a negative on any of them. Ed, I thought, aligned closer to what my feelings were, and for a selfish reason, he makes me seem verbose. So that's one of the reasons I backed him. But I had a concern about Scott's ability to have to recuse himself from things. Knowing, Mayor, that you've had to recuse yourself from other things, that was a concern of mine. I met with Scott and talked to Scott and then don't have any further issues about it. So that's why I was comfortable moving forward. And I'll echo what Councilor Woodson said. Congratulations and welcome, Scott.
All right, we have a motion. We have a second. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries unanimously. Now, congratulations, Scott. Or condolences.
Yeah.
With that, is there a motion to adjourn?
Do we want to swear him in now or the next meeting?
Next meeting, right?
He'll need to resign from LPA first.
Okay.
Right.
And we can put it on Monday's meeting if that's the will of the council.
Tuesday's meeting.
Tuesday's
Tuesday.
meeting, if that's the
Yes.
will of the council
Just
also.
for the record, only because she needs to earn his stripes. Do you have any, would you like an opportunity to speak, Scott?
Yeah, good, yeah, good point. Nice assist, Vice Mayor. Thank you. Yeah, right, right.
Thank you for the record. New Councilman Scott Safford, thank you guys so much for your trust. I just want to tell a quick little story. Everybody wants to know what the qualifications are. You know, what you're applying for a job, what skills do you have to fulfill that job? But I actually have a little story. About 6 or 7 years ago, when I first got on the LPA, I think it was about 8 years ago, we were asked to go take a zoning class. And it was really interesting. And I actually went with Dan Hughes, who used to be the mayor. And I think Dan probably wrote the book that we studied. And I mean, he was amazing. And we're driving back from the class. And I looked over at him and I said, Dan, you've got places all over the world. You've done so many things. You've been mayor. Why are you on the LPA? And he said, Scott, I got the call to serve. Someday you may get that call. And I was like, wow, that's impressive. Well, I got the call. And it just dawned on me that that was one of the most impactful things. And Dan's been such a good mentor to me. And, you know, I'm going to do my absolute best to do a great job for the next 10 months. So thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
Thanks, Scott. That was very well said about Dan Hughes. He was a mentor to many of us. When I went to, just to follow up on your story, when I decided I was going to run for council, the first person I sat down with was Dan Hughes, because I had to understand what it takes to do it. And he didn't, anybody that knew Dan, he didn't pull punches. He always made jokes, but they were very pointed jokes to what you were discussing. And because of his guidance and his wisdom is why I'm sitting up here today. So I can relate to your story. Any further?
Move to adjourn.
Got a motion by Councilor King.
Second.